Chapter 48:15. Otherwise, she could just enter the water and leave. With her speed in the water, even if the entire boat sped up, it probably wouldn't be able to keep up with her. However, they had the advantage in numbers right now, while she was alone. She only had Ming Ming by her side, so it was best to be careful. After all, she still had to stay in the Sea of Forgetfulness for a while. Even if she ran away now, she still had to guard the entrance to the undersea abyss. As long as eldest Qin and the rest followed this direction, it was useless to run. They could still find her. It was best not to fall out with them for the time being. The little fellow's eyes turned, and she turned around to yawn. Time to sleep. She suddenly stopped in her tracks and looked around in confusion. Where was that Miss Ping Air who was sobbing just now? She didn't even notice when she was dragged down. Thump, thump, thump. Tu Xianji knocked hard on the wooden stretcher beneath him, his old eyes revealing a furious glint. Wuxia. Tu Xianji's lips trembled under the bandages, and he spat out a sentence with great difficulty. "And shouldn't tea take you back to forgetfulness?" Arbor narrowed her eyes, turned to look at her, and let out a cold laugh. "Unfortunately, there's no medicine for regret in this world." "And Wuxia." Tu Xianji clenched his bandaged fists. "Wuxia." Arbor had already reached the top of the stairs. She turned around again, and a pair of eyes filled with boundless coldness stared deeply at Tu Xianji. "My surname is Qiao. Once surname Qiao, forever surname Qiao." She wouldn't change the surname. 10,000-year-old shark pearl. Arbor hooked her lips expressionlessly. "I'll kindly accept it." After saying this, she didn't look at Tu Xianji again and turned to head upstairs. Duguling blinked, looking at his young master, and then at the old woman who was sitting on the stretcher and knocking on it. "What should we do about this?" Qin Xian's eyes flashed. "Throw her down." Throw her down?" Duguling blinked, and then stammered. Throw her where?" Young Master Omega Kotoka glanced at him like he was an idiot, and then turned to leave without a word. "You're usually so smart. How come you can't even understand young Master's words today?" The fat man on the side laughed strangely, and hung the purple golden hammer on his waist. He laughed in a hoarse voice. "Where should I throw it?" "Throw it into the water, of course." He loved to throw people into the water, especially now that the water was filled with all kinds of aggressive small creatures. He just didn't know if the old woman, who was wrapped in bandages, could survive in the water for a while. Tu Xianji let out a roar from his throat. He panted with all his might, and his eyes were filled with fear. Clearly, Tu Xianji had heard their conversation clearly. She watched helplessly as two servants lifted her up on the stretcher and strode towards the railing. Tu Xianji's eyes finally revealed a trace of fear. She knew how to calculate, and was proficient in all kinds of fortune-telling techniques. However, he really did not predict that he would lose his life in this vast and boundless sea of forgetfulness today. With a splash, the water splashed. Arbor pushed open the window, propped up his chin with one hand, and looked into the distance. On the wide sea, Tu Xianji's bandages were all destroyed as soon as he entered the water. The bandages floated on the surface of the water, unraveling one by one. When the hideous wound under the bandages was exposed, Tu Xianji's heart skipped a beat. She turned around and saw a thumb-long sea snake slithering out and biting her wound. Chapter 48:16. At the same time, a dozen or so tiny sea snakes burrowed out from the water. More and more alien creatures were attracted by the fresh blood that was spreading around the prophet. They crowded around each other and surged towards the prophet. Tu Xianji let out a hoarse and gloomy hiss in the water in fright. Her pair of dim old eyes contained a bit of terrifying hatred as she looked in the direction of the large ship. To think that she, the extremely revered great prophet of the dragon clan of Forgotten River, would end up like this. Arbor didn't want to continue watching. She closed the window with one hand and stood silently for a while before turning around and pattering to the bedside. She had just sat down when she heard the fatty's hoarse voice from outside the door. "You mean, that old woman wrapped in bandages just now was actually some prophet of the dragon clan of Forgotten River?" Faint laughter came from beside her. The fatty laughed out loud. "She's so good at foretelling. Could it be that she didn't calculate that she would die today?" Knock knock. The little stoic sat on the edge of the bed and looked up at the cabin door. The plain-colored window was very clear, and she could see several figures moving about inside. Little Qiao, come out and eat breakfast. Sir Jojo was disgruntled. I don't have an appetite. I can't eat. Don't. Dugaling knocked on the door again and said with a grin, there are all kinds of snacks that you like to eat. Stop pretending. We all know your lousy habits. 3 meals a day, no less. Arbor pulled open the cabin door with a taut face and glanced at the beaming Dugaling outside. Her gaze landed on his face. She seemed to see this person sitting on a small stool with a grin and asking her, you're so young. You don't really want to die, right? People must have the will to live in order to have a future and hope. The little stoic expressionlessly walked past him. Our dear Dugaling reflexively touched his face. As strange. Why did he have a misconception that when the little stoic looked at him just now, her gaze was distant, as if she was looking at him through a hazy veil? Stoic. Dugaling chased after her with a chuckle. Do you want to eat shrimp dumplings? Do you like green bean porridge or red bean porridge? During breakfast, the little stoic was too lazy to speak. No matter who spoke to her, she would completely ignore them. There was a low pressure on the deck. The row of maids standing at the side were all trembling in fear. When they saw her, it was as if they had seen a scourge or a ferocious beast. They all distanced themselves from her. It was as if he would have a bad ending if he touched her. Arbor couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the crowd. After eating, he made an excuse to catch up on sleep and slipped away. He returned to the cabin and closed the door. The little stoic then took out a storage talisman and a handful of thunderfire balls, placing them neatly on the table. Her small hands gently moved them, causing them to make rolling sounds. Your Majesty. Lil Kuzi hurriedly ran in. At a glance, he saw His Majesty standing by the table, holding a brush and writing something. He was dressed in a sapphire blue robe, and there were a few ink bamboos on his sleeves. Her fine black hair was scattered behind her. Her thin lips were slightly pursed, and her eyes were focused on the book. She stood there like a pine tree. Truly, the young master was sculpted and polished, elegant and natural. Lil Kuzi was most afraid that he would leave without a word. Now that he saw that he was still in the study, his heart couldn't help but relax. Personally hand this letter to 8th Chi, Duan Yu said. Yes. Lil Kuzi hastily took the letter and nodded solemnly. Chapter 48:17. Immediately after, he recalled the purpose of his hasty visit and hastily reported, Your Majesty, the Kingdom of Duo Luo of the Grasslands has sent an envoy team here to meet Your Majesty. Duan Yu was taken aback. Now? Xiao Kezi quickly nodded. The Kingdom of Duo Luo? Duan Yu frowned slightly. He searched through his memories, but he could not recall where this Kingdom of Duo Luo came from. Your Majesty, the 8th young master has already led people to contact them, but the leader of their envoy team keeps saying that he wants to meet Your Majesty. Duan Yu was rather impatient. I don't have time. How could he be in the mood to meet this and that, and those miscellaneous people? Right now, his heart had already flown to the river of forgetfulness, and was thinking of meeting up with the little girl. Even now, the first-hand information he had still did not reveal the little girl's whereabouts. How could he not be worried? What exactly happened to Emolien, that idiot? Your Majesty, Your Majesty! A young eunuch rushed over in a flurry, and almost tripped over the protruding door sill. He staggered and stumbled forward a few steps. Xiao Kezi involuntarily creased his brows and chided. What are you in such a hurry for? How dare you be so unruly in front of His Majesty? Duan Yu looked up and glanced at him dryly. What happened? The young eunuch hastily knelt in salute and stammered. Reporting to Your Majesty, Miss Wu has started fighting with the envoy team. The 8th young master ordered this servant to quickly report. Duan Yu pressed his throbbing temples. Xiao Kezi, go settle this matter. Xiao Kezi quickly nodded. He knew that this His Majesty could not wait a second longer, and had to set off now. Other people did not know what that letter was. How could Xiao Kezi not know? His Majesty longed for the river of forgetfulness, not because of how beautiful and attractive the sea of forgetfulness was, but because there was someone in the river of forgetfulness that attracted his heart, causing him to yearn for that person uncontrollably. Duan Yu left without consulting Chestnut, and did not have time to speak to him. Just as he heard a commotion outside the door approaching from afar. Two figures, one red and one black, dashed through the door and began to fight in the courtyard of the garrison mansion. As the spiritual power surged, two graceful figures could be seen, as if they were passing through flowers and trees, circling around people and hands in the courtyard. Red and blue light would occasionally pass through, and the light was faintly discernible. Wu Ruomei was wearing a scarlet-red short-sleeved gown. She shouted, "Don't run!" and chased after him. She raised her sword and slashed at him. The black-clothed woman on the other side had a black veil covering her face, revealing only a pair of sharp almond eyes. When she reached out to receive the attack, she turned around and saw Duan Yu and Chestnut standing nearby. There was no expression on Chestnut's furry face. His pair of round black eyes silently stared at the two women who were fighting. "Your Majesty the Emperor of Tsang Prefecture. Is this how you treat your guests?" A few strangers ran over from the corridor that connected the atrium to the garden. The person running at the front couldn't help but gasp for breath. It seemed that he was in a hurry. Duan Yu's icy gaze swept over those people. Xiao Kezi quickly went up and reported in a low voice, "These people are from the envoy group of the Kingdom of Duoluo of the Prairie." Duan Yu's sharp gaze stared at the envoy who spoke, then shifted to Miss Wu. "Still not stopping?" Xiao Kezi shouted in exasperation. He angrily said, "Simply impudent to the extreme. How dare they disregard their dignity and fight each other in front of His Majesty? Arrest them all." Chapter 48:18. As soon as he finished speaking, several figures walked up and lifted Miss Wu up like grabbing a little chick. They separated the black-clothed woman, who was fighting with her, and restrained both of them. Even though Wu Ruomei's arm was grabbed, she couldn't resist kicking at the black-clothed young lady from afar. She couldn't resist cursing. "No wonder you had to cover your face. Or are you trying to discuss with a fake face? You should cover your face. And it's best if you don't take off your black veil. Otherwise, I'll beat you up every time I see you." Xiao Kezi's face was dark, but he was rather curious. Although this Wu Qianjin from the Prime Minister's family wasn't very reliable most of the time, she came from a noble family after all, so her basic self-restraint and etiquette were absolutely indisputable. But now, Xiao Kezi couldn't help feeling curious, and his gaze probingly swept towards the veil on the black-clothed young lady's face. What did a fake face mean? The black-clothed young lady couldn't help but sneer. "What does it have to do with you? I think you're just jealous." Wu Ruomei couldn't help but laugh in exasperation. "I'm jealous of your fake face? You're really thick-skinned, daring to say anything." Duan Yu's gaze was chilly as he looked at the several people from the Kingdom of Luo's envoy group, who were briskly walking over. A small kingdom, that could barely be found on the map of the 3 provinces, came to find him so openly, saying that they had something to discuss with him in person? And they didn't even accept 8th young Sir Qi's invitation. Who on earth gave them the confidence to come here and shout like this? They said they wanted to discuss with him, Duan Yu? And he had to accompany them to the end? What the heck? This whatever Kingdom of Luo was originally developed from a small tribe on the prairie. A while ago, he used a grand banner to establish a kingdom, but this small lousy kingdom dared to boast shamelessly in front of him. Duan Yu patted Chestnut's large head, and was too lazy to pay attention to this farce. Unexpectedly, the leader of the envoy group from the Kingdom of Luo abruptly took a few steps forward and said seriously, "Your Honorable Majesty of Tsangzhou, if you abandon us like this and refuse to meet with us face to face, you will certainly regret it immensely in the future. Although our Kingdom of Luo grew on the prairie, we are very familiar with the situation of the 3 provinces. Your Majesty of Tsangzhou, believe that this humble one and the Kingdom of Luo will bring you a huge surprise. Don't believe him, Your Majesty. He had only brought a fake face. If you see it, you'll be so angry that you won't even have time to wash your eyes." Wu Ruomei, who was standing to the side, spoke with conviction. Duan Yu gave him a deep look. Now he was actually a bit curious as to what kind of surprise this leader of the Dorwo envoy group was going to present to him. "Your Majesty, please." The leader of the Kingdom of Daluo's diplomatic mission extended his hand in an inviting gesture. He took the lead and followed Duan Yu into the study. Wu Ruomei wanted to follow them in, but was stopped by Xiao Kezi. He was so angry that he stomped his feet and shouted, "Xiao Kezi, get out of the way. Let me tell you, those people are definitely not good people." Little Kezi said with a straight face, "Miss Wu, if you continue to make such a ruckus, little Kezi has no choice but to get someone to shut your mouth and stop you from making a ruckus." Wu Ruomei rolled her eyes in anger. However, due to Lil Kezi's threat, she did not dare to speak loudly. The leader of the envoy group entered the study and turned to close the door. He smiled at Duan Yu and bowed. "Your Honorable Majesty, I respectfully represent my kingdom of Daliuo to come and discuss the matter of cooperation with you." Chapter 48:19. This is our prairie's pearl, Miss Lily. The leader of the envoy group said proudly to Duan Yu before turning to give Lily a look. The woman in black removed the black veil covering her face and smiled at Duan Yu. Her fluttering eyelashes fluttered like butterfly wings. Her small oval face had a beautiful smile. Her gentleness carried a hint of demure serenity, and her quick-wittedness carried a hint of craftiness. At first glance, she looked a bit familiar. At second glance, Duan Yu's handsome face darkened. He knew why he found her familiar. This woman's face was 40% similar to Jojo's, especially that pair of eyes. No wonder Wu Ruomei kept calling it a fake face earlier. Wu Ruomei had seen Jojo's portrait before. Whether it was the facial features, the skin, or even the hairstyle, this fake face was infinitely close to Jojo's. Wu Ruomei was right. This face really made him lose his appetite, and he wished for nothing more than to wash his eyes immediately. The leader of the envoy group had actually been paying attention to Duan Yu's expression the entire time. However, even though Duan Yu's mind was raging, he did not show it on his face, so he could not tell at all. Why didn't he show any expression? This person muttered in his mind, unable to grasp the attitude of this Zhangzhou emperor. Logically speaking, when he saw this face, apart from being shocked, he should be wild with joy. According to their Kingdom of Daliuo's investigation of the rulers of the 3 provinces, this Zhangzhou emperor should be a strong competitor of the Divine Province's crown prince. Before he could finish his thought, he heard Duan Yu's cold voice. "Why did you bring her here?" The leader of the Kingdom of Daliuo's envoy group couldn't help but shudder inwardly, thinking that this voice was truly bone-chilling. He hastily forced a smile and said, "Your Majesty of Zhangzhou, can we talk about cooperation? What do you want to cooperate on? Our common enemy is the Divine Province." The envoy continued, "The great emperor of the Divine Prefecture wants us to offer tributes every year, but we haven't had a good harvest. Coupled with the zombies running around everywhere, we can't grow anything at all. Get to the point." Duan Yu didn't want to continue listening to his nonsense and coldly interrupted him. "The country of Daliuo is willing to help you become the true overlord of the upper 3 continents." Duan Yu stared sharply at the envoy before him, and he suddenly couldn't resist chuckling. "Don't you think you're a bit ridiculous? It was just a small place, yet he kept saying that he would help him unify the 3 prefectures." Duan Yuezhen couldn't resist laughing loudly. The envoy said with a serious expression, "Believe me, Your Majesty, the key lies in the little crown princess of the divine land." The envoy did not notice Duan Yu's gloomy expression and continued to blabber self-righteously. "Lilier's appearance can still be adjusted. She will look more and more like that little crown princess. At that time we'll turn the dragon into a phoenix and switch that little crown princess to your side." The more the envoy spoke, the more spirited he became, and he couldn't resist guffawing. "Think about it. Wouldn't we control the lifeline of the divine province?" Duan Yu also chuckled at him. His chuckle was deep and filled with an icy chill. He suddenly reached out to strangle that woman in black. Chapter 48:20. Before that envoy could react, he heard a crisp crack. The envoys all revealed astonishment as they looked at the expressionless Zhangzhou emperor in horror. Lily's neck drooped crookedly in Duan Yu's hand. Her beautiful face was still a bit bewildered, as though she couldn't figure out what was going on. He actually snapped Lily's neck without any explanation? This man didn't hesitate at all when he snapped Lily's neck. as though he was merely slaughtering a pig, a cow, a lamb, or a chicken. Looking at the Zhongzhou emperor's cold and indifferent gaze, the envoys all shuddered, and great terror flashed through their eyes. The leader of the envoy group forcefully suppressed his indignation and said coldly, "If your majesty doesn't want to cooperate with us, then there's no need to kill Lily. You can just say that you don't want to cooperate." Duan Yu glanced at him with a sneer, and flung away the woman's corpse with a tilted head. He took out a handkerchief from his inner world, and carefully wiped his hands. Duan Yu looked at them coldly without any intention of explaining. "Take care of them all." As soon as he finished speaking, dozens of figures suddenly appeared from all directions, and rushed toward those envoys to kill them all. The kingdom of Luo's envoys were all shocked and hastily resisted in a fluster. However, there were too many hidden guards, and they simply couldn't deal with them. Before half an hour was up, the 100 hidden guards had killed all the envoys. Ing dragged the leader of the envoys in front of Duan Yu, and kicked the back of his knee. The leader of the envoys yelped and fell to the ground with a face full of terror. His head was forcefully stepped on, and he prostrated himself on the ground. With his head being stepped on, he strenuously tried to raise his head to speak, and he stammered, You all? Zhongzhou Emperor, His Majesty you. Ouch. Let him speak, Duan Yu coldly ordered. The secret guards immediately retracted their legs, bowed respectfully, and took a few steps back to stand still. The hidden guard leader raised his head while coughing up blood. His eyes stared fixedly at Duan Yu in front of him, and before he could say more than a few words, blood gushed out of his mouth. You guys! If you don't want to cooperate with us, there are many people who want to cooperate with us. There was a strange smile on the face of the head envoy. The smile on his face made one's hair stand on end. Duan Yu found him extremely displeasing to the eye, so he personally waved his hand, and a surge of sacred energy struck that person's head. Don't speak if you don't know how to speak human language, Duan Yu coldly retorted as he watched the envoy fall heavily to the ground. Clean this place up. Xiao Kazi hurriedly ordered a group of trembling servants to come in and clean up the mess. However, Duan Yu suddenly turned his head and stopped in his tracks. He narrowed his eyes and coldly stared at the head envoy lying on the ground. He walked towards him step by step, approaching the head envoy's side. His cold gaze landed on the fake smile on his face. Duan Yu suddenly raised his leg and kicked. With a bang, the head envoy turned into a pile of fragments and disappeared before everyone's astonished eyes. Duan Yu's heart thumped heavily, and he immediately ordered sternly. Chapter 48:21. Gather all the men in the secret pavilion and seal off all the major passageways in Yin City. Search for this person with all our might. A clone. The one who came to negotiate with him was actually this head envoy's clone. And it wasn't until just now that he realized something was amiss. If you don't want to cooperate with us, there are many people who want to cooperate with us. The head envoy's words surfaced in Duan Yu's mind, and his expression abruptly changed. Probing, a blatant probing. They came here to probe him. If he was willing to cooperate with them, then they would hit it off right away. If he wasn't judging from the envoy's words, they would probably find someone else to cooperate with. A tiny kingdom of the prairie wanted to be an ant trying to shake a tree and make a move on the enormous divine province? Just as the heavenly providence was about to move, this tiny kingdom of Duoluo wanted to take advantage of the situation? Or was it trying to borrow the power of the east wind in a vain attempt to rise to the top? The heavens were about to change. Were all the snakes, insects, rats, and ants planning to collectively come out of their holes? Duan Yu's eyes were cold, and his fingers clenched slightly. He coldly ordered, Go investigate. I want all the news regarding this kingdom of Duoluo in recent years. I want to know everything, no matter how big or small. Yes. Ing cupped his hands in salute, and immediately flew out of the study with several people. A manservant who was cleaning up the floor was so scared that he scrambled back a few steps. Everyone turned to look at the sound. They saw Lily who was lying on the floor, staring fixedly at them. Her mouth was agape, and her face was ghastly pale. Her forelimbs were all curled up deformed, and her entire body was curled up into a strip. Her appearance was very strange and frightening. Lilka glared fiercely at the manservant who was making a fuss. Hurry and clean it up. Don't let them stay here and be an eyesore. The manservant nodded frantically and closed his eyes, not daring to look at Lily. He turned his face slightly to the side and shakily reached out to grab Lilier's legs. Don't move. Duan Yu's pupils contracted as he suddenly shouted. The manservant subconsciously withdrew his hand, but in the next second, he felt an irreversible force pulling him away from Lilier. After the huge force disappeared, the manservant fell on his back due to inertia. When he turned around, he saw that the stiff Liliel had actually moved. After a series of cracking sounds, Lilier's limbs were twisted in an abnormal way, and she was lying on the ground in an extremely weird posture. What is this? Xiao Kazi exclaimed. Protect the Emperor! Protect the Emperor! It's a corpse puppet! This woman has become a corpse puppet! Bang! The sound of the door being kicked was suddenly heard. The pitiful door of the study fell to the ground and landed heavily on Lilier. Wu Ruomei, who rushed in after hearing the news, held an email piercer in each hand. Her eyes were wide open as she shouted, "Who dares to assassinate His Majesty? Bold thief, come out for me!" Everyone was speechless. Where is he? Wu Ruomei stepped on the door and furrowed her brows. Where is the assassin? Lil Kazi speechlessly looked at this unreliable miss of the Wu family. He stretched out a finger and weakly pointed at Wu Ruomei's feet. The latter looked down and saw a sinister head wriggling out from under the door she was stepping on. It was currently glaring at her with a murderous glint. Wu Ruomei inwardly cursed, "Fuck." Her legs trembled in fright, and she quickly jumped down from the door. Chapter 48-22. This guy shouted in astonishment. What the hell is this? Wasn't her looks too frightening? Isn't she the person who fought with you earlier, miss? That fake. Wu Ruomei was horrified and hastily retreated a few steps. My heavens! This transformation was too exaggerated. Duan Yu's expression was extremely unsightly. What the hell was this person from the kingdom of Luo doing? He actually vainly attempted to transform this kind of shady woman into Jojo's appearance? Were they stupid or was he stupid? This kind of transformation couldn't be concealed from anyone, let alone Emolian, right? That little stoic face number 101, who could consistently act like it from start to finish when Duan Yu thought of this. He gave the hidden guard leader Yi a look, and the latter understood and stepped forward. He led a group of hidden guards and used a long spear to pin Lilier, who was incessantly swimming around and trying to attack people, to the ground. This Lilier was also incessantly shrieking. However, her hands and feet were entangled by the long spear, so she couldn't move, much less attack people. Red lights flashed in her eyes. It's not a zombie. Look carefully at her hands and feet. Duan Yu gestured for everyone to look at Lilier's hands and feet. Everyone took a closer look and finally saw some clues. Lilier's hands and feet were actually connected to a kind of lustrous and transparent silk thread that was as thin as a cicada. She suddenly moved, because the owner of this silk thread was manipulating it. It's a puppet with a secret art. Duan Yu's handsome face froze as he stated icily. It's not a zombie. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand and threw a concealed weapon at the beam. A hunchbacked elder immediately jumped down from the beam with a cackle. Brats, you have good taste. However, this old man can't continue playing with you. The hunchbacked elder's eyes glinted, and he swiftly threw out a pellet. A bang sound was heard, and a cloud of smoke started to diffuse out of the projectile. Then it suddenly dissipated. The hunchbacked elder, who wanted to take advantage of this smoke to flee with Lilier, looked over in bewilderment. A raven bone fan appeared in Duan Yu's hand. With a casual wave of his hand, the smoke that had yet to disperse was swept away. The man looked at him coldly. You want to escape? Do you think you can escape from my hands? The hunchbacked old man gritted his teeth. He took out a cigarette bomb from each of his 10 fingers and threw it to the ground. This time, the smoke bomb did not explode at all. Not to mention a cloud of smoke. Not even a speck of smoke could be seen. If the hunchbacked old man could curse at this moment, he would definitely want to curse. Unfortunately, his body was heavily suppressed by a tyrannical pressure, and he could not utter a single syllable. It wasn't until the pressure was slightly removed that he felt his breathing become a little smoother, that he felt a sharp pain in his neck. He lowered his head and saw that his life had fallen into the hands of this young emperor. The man's pitch-black peach blossom eyes coldly stared at him, and a mocking smile curled on his lips. Now you still don't plan to tell me the truth? I am a puppet master from the kingdom of Duo Luo, the hunchbacked elder shouted in a panic. Don't kill me. I will speak, I can say anything. It's useless to kill me. In fact, there are many puppet masters like me in the kingdom of Duo Luo. I also know that each of them have a lily in their hands. Chapter 48:23. What did it mean that everyone had a lily in their hands? These idiots from the state of Duo Luo made a large batch of people who resembled Jojo? Duan Yu angrily gripped the neck of that puppet master from the state of Duo Luo and demanded harshly, "Speak. How did you make this woman appear?" This person's facial features that degenerated after death were completely different from Jojo's. How did the so-called 40% resemblance come about when they were alive? We have a special medicinal liquid. After taking it, it can be infinitely similar to a person. Ridiculous. Duan Yu clearly did not believe this puppet master's nonsense. He tightened his grip and coldly said, "Do you think I will believe your words?" The puppet master's neck fell into Duan Yu's hands, and he nervously replied, his eyes brimming with fear. Your Majesty, I did not lie at all. Everything I said is true." The puppet master felt his breathing becoming irregular again. He hastily stabilized his breathing and confessed repeatedly, "Your Majesty, please believe me. What we puppet masters can do is secretly control these lily heirs one-on-one. We all have the talent to conceal our presence." This puppet master cried out in panic. Lily heirs are indeed modified from the transformation medicinal liquid. This kind of directional transformation medicinal liquid is more effective than the transformation talismans drawn by talisman practitioners. It can be continuously modified and improved to target a certain person. The Lilia number 9 you see is the most low-grade modified Lilier. This lowly one heard that Lilier number 0 is the true perfect product. Duan Yu's eyes were instantly filled with a bloody storm. He gripped that puppet master's neck and coldly asked, "When did you start doing this?" More than half a year ago, at the beginning of this year." The puppet master thought for a moment before suddenly exclaiming, "Oh, right around the time the young crown princess returned to the divine province." The young crown princess probably returned to the divine province at the beginning of February. And it was almost October now. A thought flashed through Duan Yu's mind. From the looks of it, this conspiracy wasn't targeting Xiao, but rather Emolien, that punk. Where's the laboratory? These people couldn't research the shape-shifting liquid in broad daylight. He must be hiding in some rat hole, doing this kind of shameful research all day long. The puppet master trembled. "Why, Your Majesty, I really don't know. Who was the person who just escaped?" Duan Yu didn't dwell on this question, and continued to ask. That lord is our Doro country's 3 state teachers." The puppet master hurriedly said. "One of the 3 state teachers of Doro, Shinta Jing." Duan Yu raised a brow. "Actually, she's a very beautiful woman," the puppet master stammered. "She's also used a transformation potion. She was an outstanding pharmacist. This shape-shifting liquid was researched with her as the core." Shinta Jing. Duan Yu coldly muttered this name in his mind. His handsome brows raised as he coldly asked, "Tell me everything you know." The puppet master was so anxious that his forehead was drenched in cold sweat. The problem was that he had already told him everything he knew. Chapter 48:24. He was only a peripheral member of the kingdom of Doro. One only needed to look at the puppets he was controlling to know this. The one he was controlling was only Lilier number 9. And Lilier number 9 could not compare to Lilier number 0, whether it was her ability to modify, her personal ability, her cultivation, etc. It was not an exaggeration to say that Lilier number 9 was inferior to Lilier number 9. Duan Yu was so infuriated that his expression turned cold, and he involuntarily increased the force in his hand. "It seems that it's better to search your soul. No, 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 you can't search my soul. A trace of fear flashed through the puppet master's eyes. Every kingdom of Doruo has a soul-locking pill planted in our conscious. Once our souls are forcefully searched, it will trigger a self-explosion. At that time, not only will this one be finished, even you and the people around you will also be sent flying by the powerful explosion. When the group of little servants heard this, their faces all revealed a look of panic and fear, and they subconsciously took a few steps back. Duan Yu coolly looked at this puppeteer, as if he was assessing whether his words were true or false. Every word this one said is true. If I have deceived your majesty, this one is willing to accept the punishment of heaven's wrath, that person said fearfully, his face full of sincerity. Withdraw all of you, Duan Yu ordered coldly. Xiao Kezi panicked and hastily stepped forward. He lowered his head and advised, Your Majesty, you must not take the risk yourself. Your Majesty, please allow this subordinate to attempt a soul searching to see if this old fellow is speaking the truth. A hidden guard walked out from behind Yi and solemnly cupped his hands. Why would Duan Yu be afraid of a mere soul-destroying body self-explosion? He shook his head and instructed the hidden guards. All of you withdraw. Your Majesty, Duan Yu's piercingly cold gaze swept over everyone. Although Xiao Kezi was flustered, he knew that even though His Majesty was young, his words had always been firm and uncompromising. Since he had already made up his mind, it meant that no one could sway him. Everyone retreated out of the room with unsightly expressions and looked at each other in dismay. Duan Yu's gaze landed on that puppet master. If you want to verify a person's words, it's best to personally examine them. The puppet master did not expect that the other party was still unwilling to let him go even after he had explained everything. Not to mention, he had already said that the soul-sealing pill had been planted in his head. Once his soul was searched, he would self-destruct. However, the young emperor in front of him was still unwilling to let him go. He was not willing to give him a way out. The puppet master's eyes instantly turned scarlet, and he wanted to fight Duan Yu with his life on the line. But could he? Being kicked by Duan Yu, he was like a weak little chick whose lifeline was being squeezed by the neck. He simply couldn't muster the slightest strength to resist. Duan Yu pressed down on his head and coldly glanced at him. If you want to blame someone, blame your lord for insisting on provoking us. Yellow Springs hell, don't look for the wrong person for revenge. Ah! The puppet master let out an extremely unpleasant and hoarse roar. Soon after, he felt as if his conscience had been torn open by someone. All his secrets were skimmed through in front of someone else's eyes. There was no movement at all. Duan Yu knitted his brows, and a trace of mockery curled up on his lips. As expected, this person's head did not contain the soul-sealing pill that he had mentioned. Chapter 48-25. After all, he was only a peripheral member of the state of Duoluo. It seemed that knowing so much was already his limit. Perhaps it was because he was smart enough and had secretly accumulated some information in his daily life. As for things that were too core, a peripheral member like him definitely wouldn't know. Duan Yu tossed that person's corpse aside. Before he left the study, a wisp of Devil Emperor's fire silently ignited on the puppet master's body. In the blink of an eye, that person was completely burned, leaving not even a trace of residue. Who knew if there was some bizarre resurrection technique among the puppet mystic arts? Let's just burn you to ashes and let you properly resurrect. Duan Yu stepped out of the study and looked up at the clear blue sky. Under this vast sky, how many filthy bastards were secretly breeding in the dark places where the sunlight couldn't reach? Xiao Kezi breathed a sigh of relief and hastily ran up. Your Majesty, that puppet master was deceiving us. Duan Yu nodded. After all, death from a soul search was not something relaxing or pleasant. Presumably, that puppet master would rather have Duan Yu slit his throat cleanly than die from a soul search. 2 hours later, Shadow, the hidden guard from the secret pavilion, who went to investigate, scuttled into the study with several hidden guards. He respectfully cupped his hands at Duan Yu. Your Majesty. Shadow walked up and bowed as he handed over a thick stack of documents. All the movements of the state of Duoluo in recent years, no matter how detailed, were all recorded in these documents. The study was quiet. After Xiao Kezi served Duan Yu a cup of tea, he dutifully retreated to stand guard outside the door. Several secret guards stood silently in front of the desk, like blocks of wood. Only the rustling of papers could be heard in the study, as Duan Yu flipped through the documents. The hidden guards held their breaths, as they waited for this young emperor to give his orders. In less than 15 minutes, Duan Yu finished browsing through that stack of documents with a sullen expression. He heavily slapped the documents with his palm. An extremely low pressure pervaded the study. The hidden guards lowered their heads and didn't dare to speak. It was written very clearly in the documents. The state of Duoluo was established at the beginning of this year. Originally, it was just an insignificant tribe in the Pingjin Prairie, between the Divine Land and Sangzhou. Their scale was not even 1/100th of that of the barbarian tribes. But it was this small tribe that had established a country. Now they actually came knocking on Duan Yu's door and gleefully revealed Lily Er's plan to Duan Yu. This kind of probing was too obvious. The state of Luo had made it clear that if Duan Yu didn't cooperate with them, they would settle for the next best thing and find someone else to cooperate with. Such a disgusting way of doing things really made people panic in their hearts. Lilier number 9-0 meant that there were at least 10 Lilier. Duan Yu set down the stack of documents in his hand and pinched the space between his brows as he coldly said, "Pass on Zhen's verbal decree. Command the general of the Tiger Cavalry, Hu Gang, to lead his men to the Pingjin Prairie. Within half a month, I want to hear the news of the destruction of this country of Duoluo." Yes. Duan Yu waved his hand to dismiss everyone. Let Yi in. The leader of the secret pavilion's hidden guards, Yi, appeared inside the study like a ghost and soundlessly arrived before Duan Yu. Duan Yu didn't even look up as he stared at the stack of documents with a frown. His finger tapped on one of the papers. This state of Duoluo is extremely mysterious. Chapter 48-26. That's all the information we could gather. It says that their territory is surrounded by man-eating black swamps. The swamps are crawling with man-eating insects and ants, so it will be difficult to pass through. Yi remained silent and habitually listened to His Majesty's words carefully. Flying is prohibited nearby, so not a single bird can pass through their array. In addition, once you step into the territory of the state of Duoluo, your divine senses will also be blocked by that array. Duan Yu looked up at Yi and ordered, "Take 1,000 people with you. Bring along the best formation masters, apothecaries and superhumans. We want to hear good news from you within 10 days. Yes. Yi nodded heavily. Having Tiger Gang dispatch troops to attack the state of Duoluo was only what they did on the surface. What Duan Yu truly wanted to get rid of were those damn Lily. He wanted Yi to lead a group of hidden guards to destroy the state of Duoluo's laboratory. He wanted those messy Lily to all disappear from this world. What exactly did the state of Duoluo want to do? After Duan Yu settled these matters, he summoned Xiao Kezi and said a few words before leaving the study to summon Chestnut. Xiao Kezi involuntarily sighed as he watched His Majesty's departing figure. His Majesty said that he would need at least half a month before returning. He just didn't know if His Majesty's wishes would be fulfilled. Miss Shui Yuan's prediction was so accurate. If we can't obtain the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl, our entire clan will be annihilated. This is all your fault, all your fault. You are the eternal sinner of the Dragon Clan of Forgetfulness. It was you who caused the entire Dragon Clan of Forgetfulness to be annihilated. Arbor abruptly opened his eyes and exhaled deeply. He coldly stared at the fluttering bed canopy above him, his gaze abruptly chilling. Even ancestors said that it was the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl that chose Mother on its own. Neither Mother nor she had done anything wrong. It was only the human heart and delusions that were at fault. Greed was hard to quench. When they worked so hard just to obtain a 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl, they wasted a lot of time and effort. They never thought of relying on their own abilities to advance. So they wanted to rely on luck? However, luck, this kind of illusory thing, was it something that everyone could have? A cluster of black flames emerged from the ferrule that had drilled out from under her sleeve. You want to use a wisp of your soul to enter my dream and cause trouble? Arbor said coldly, Let the holy fire that burns everything in the world take you to hell. Prophet Tuesday. A slight fluctuation appeared in the air in front of him. In less than a second, the air in front of him calmed down again without the slightest change. Dong 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 dong. Omega Kotoka's voice could be heard from the cabin door. Jojo, what happened? In that instant, there seemed to be a hidden soul remembrance fluctuation. The strange thing was it seemed to be gone now. Arbor's cold voice suddenly sounded. It's nothing. There was a little demon that wanted to enter my dream. It's been dealt with. That would require. I'm going to sleep. Arbor interrupted him coldly. Omega Kotoka stood outside the door and waited for a while. He heard that the aura in the cabin had calmed down, and there was no sound at all. It seemed that Arbor was resting again. Omega Kotoka turned around and met his elder brother's smiling gaze. What happened? Eldest young master blinked and asked. Omega Kotoka left without a word. He was too lazy to even look at his elder brother. Chapter 48-27. Eldest young Sir Chin harumphed and rubbed his nose. He walked to Arbor's door with a grin and lightly knocked twice. Jojo, are you all right? It was very quiet inside. Other than the faint sound of breathing, there wasn't any sound at all. Eldest young Sir Chin rubbed his chin and coughed lightly. Jojo is asleep. Don't disturb her. When the several attendants following behind him heard this, they all revealed indescribable expressions. It seemed like the ones who insisted on disturbing someone else's sleep were eldest young sir and second young sir. Right? The next morning, Arbor got up refreshed and expressionlessly strolled to the deck of the ship, sitting down to eat breakfast as usual. Eldest young sir and second young sir had been waiting for a long time. When they saw her walk over with a stoic face, they couldn't help but exchange a glance. The little stoic didn't seem to be in any abnormal state. What exactly happened last night? The two scratched their cheeks as they pondered. However, a certain Sundara stoic refused to say, so they couldn't ask too much. Jojo, have some dessert. Eldest young Sir Chin grinned as he brought her a plate of exquisite pastries and brought it to her. He feigned indifference as he asked, Did someone's divine sense sweep into your room last night? Arbor expressionlessly took the plate of pastries and poked a small piece with a spoon. She said indifferently, It was Prophet Tuesday. Everyone was involuntarily taken aback. A wisp of Prophet Tu's soul had yet to dissipate. There was nothing hard to say about him entering her dream to seek revenge. Moreover, if it weren't for the fact that they didn't handle it cleanly, how could Prophet Tu find an opportunity to seek revenge on her? The little stoic swept a disdainful glance at eldest young sir. Eldest young Sir Chin immediately sat up straight and hastily said with a chuckle, Aya, I really didn't expect this old woman to have such godly means. Jojo, are you all right? If I wasn't, would I still be sitting here with you? Arbor looked at eldest young sir like he was looking at an idiot. Dougal Ling and the others couldn't resist snickering silently. Eldest young master looked at Jojo with a stifled expression. Speechless, he pursed his lips and said, Okay. Of course, nothing will happen to Jojo. How could a mere two Shinzi hurt Xiao Xiao? Arbor didn't say anything. This meant that she finally acknowledged one of eldest Chin's words. Everyone couldn't help but twitch their mouths speechlessly, inwardly thinking that this Sundara little stoic was truly a headache. Looking at the journey, we should be able to reach the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm in 2 days. You said before that the Pond Lotus Sacred Land is guarded by the 5 great families of the River of Forgetfulness. Every aristocratic family has a key, and only by gathering these 5 keys can we open the passage to the depths of the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm. Arbor paused. You interrogated Prophet Tu and found out where the 5 keys are? Eldest young Sir Chin nodded with a smile. It's about time. We've already sent our men to the various patrician families to search. Let's go there first, and the key will be delivered later. This way, we won't delay the opening of the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm. Arbor was silent. Among the 5 great patrician families in the Sea of Forgetfulness, the Long clan had dug its own grave, and the Duo clan was more or less dead in name only. The remaining 3 patrician families were definitely trembling with fear. If they didn't want to cause trouble, they definitely wouldn't clash with the Qin estate of the Divine Province. Thus, it really wasn't difficult to obtain those 5 keys at all. Arbor silently ate the pastries and millet porridge. Although she didn't say anything, her mind was constantly pondering. Previously, little Tai Sui wanted to bring her to the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm. Chapter 48:28. Now that the two of them were separated, logically speaking, would little Tai Sui be waiting for her at the entrance of the Pool Lotus Sacred Realm? That was extremely likely. That was why the poison-tailed butterflies she sent out to search for him weren't able to find him in the nearby waters. The reason was that little Tai Sui had already gone far. Arbor made a decision in her mind. She would follow the Qin Estate's people to the Pool Lotus Sacred Realm first. She did feel a bit uncomfortable, but this was already the best solution in the current situation where her divine sense had yet to recover. Once they entered the mystic realm, who knew if they would get separated in such a large mystic realm? At that time, she would take the opportunity to stroll around casually. Who knew if they would meet again in such a large mystic realm? Sir Jojo's eyes flickered. Since he had already made up his mind, his heart that had been on edge for the past few days relaxed slightly. In any case, they were going to the Pool Lotus Sacred Realm to find that wisp of Lian's soul. Since they were already here, they might as well let nature take its course. Young sir. A servant of the Qin estate ran over with a strange expression on his face. He glanced at them hesitantly, as if he wanted to say something. Eldest young Sir Qin was baffled, and he swept that person a glance. If you have something to say, just say it. Why are you hemming and hawing? They're drifting back again. The boatman had a strange expression on his face as he called out. Fifth young Sir Qin was walking over with a plate of freshly made 1,000-layer pastry, and he couldn't help but say good-naturedly, "Akai, speak properly." What floated back again? The servant called Akai gestured with his hands and feet, and said to the Qin estate's silent young masters with knitted brows, It's those people that eldest young sir ordered us to throw down a few days ago, after we fished them up. They floated back again. As the servant spoke, he was beaming with joy. It seemed that he also found this matter extremely hilarious. Eldest young sir clearly didn't remember this matter, and he looked at that person called Akai in bewilderment. What are you talking about? What people floated back? Fifth young Sir Qin twitched his mouth. His memory was evidently better than his eldest brother's. Placing the 1,000-layer pastry in front of the little stoic, the fifth young sir coughed lightly and said, "Eldest brother, it should be those people from the Wangchuan duo clan. I saw them on the surface of the sea earlier, so I sent people to fish them up." Without another word, Big Brother ordered the servants to throw them down. Wangchuan duo clan? Eldest young Sir Qin rubbed his chin. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration and exclaimed, "Oh, I remember now. It's that group of people who were thrown into the sea by the little stoic, and had their spiritual senses and cultivation sealed. Unlucky bastard." The little stoic glanced askew at the eldest young sir, and put on an aloof face. "Who are you?" Why was she so bored as to throw him into the water? She stood up and walked towards the railing. He raised his head and looked into the distance. He saw a dozen or so men and women on the surface of the sea. Some of them were lying on wooden planks, while others had activated their defensive barriers. As they drifted, they kept waving and calling for help. The eldest young master quickly walked over and looked from afar. Sure enough, he saw the young miss of the Wangchuan duo clan, Duo Shanmei. She was hugging a large wooden board and sitting alone on it. She kept waving her hands in the direction of the ship while shouting something. My goodness! These people from the Forgetful River Duo clan still haven't recovered their spiritual senses and cultivation base? Linga couldn't help but exclaim. The fifth young sir shook his head. They should have recovered already. Arbor expressionlessly stuffed a piece of 1,000-layer pastry into his mouth, before turning to leave. Chapter 48:29. She also recognized that these people were the ones who came to the snowy island to ask her for Duo Shanming. Duo Shanming's master, Wang Xian, brought this group of juniors here to cause trouble. This Wang Xian also launched a mental attack on her earlier. That's right, this person died after Duan Yu burned his conscience with the Devil Emperor's flame. The little stoic's memory was pretty good, so she recalled everything after a bit of thought. She recognized that Miss Duo. She originally had short hair and a delicate and pretty small face, but after many days of sea breeze and rolling waves, her face was now completely black. Her hair also hadn't been washed for who knew how many days as it drooped on top of her head. However, what did these people's misfortune have to do with her? Seeing the little stoic turn around and leave the railing with a clearly displeased expression, the eldest young sir thought. Fortunately, this young sir was smart and quick-witted, ordering people to throw them off the boat first. Otherwise, the little stoic would definitely disdain him as well. That would be a loss that outweighed the gains. This girl didn't like him very much to begin with, so he didn't want her to dislike him even more. There seems to be a lot more people inside, Ling Gu exclaimed as she pointed at the people on the sea. Why are there 2 children inside? I remember that the Wangchuan duo clan didn't have children in the past. Ling Gu was halfway through her sentence when she saw the little stoic turn back. She carefully sized up the sea, and her delicate brows furrowed slightly. Ling Gu was right. There seemed to be many people she hadn't seen before mixed in with the Wangchuan duo clan. There were 12 to 20 men and women of all ages, and each of their faces revealed a bewildered expression. Let's salvage them first, Xiao Mu said with a cold expression. Eldest young Sir Qin said with a grin. Jojo, don't you hate the Wangchuan duo clan? She did hate the Wangchuan duo clan who bared their fangs and brandished their claws, but there seemed to be many commoners among them. She couldn't just leave those people in the lurch for the sake of the monk. The servant called Afu organized a group of servants and went up to fish out the people in the water. At this time, Duo Shanmei also clearly saw who the other party was. Her gaze landed on eldest Qin, and her expression instantly turned unsightly. Wasn't this the young master who had thrown them into the sea again not long ago? Enemies were truly bound to meet on a narrow road. They didn't know if he would once again turn hostile, and mercilessly Duo Shanmei was hauled onto the ship with a rope and landed on the deck with a plop. She turned around and saw the little stoic's face that left a deep impression on her. Her face immediately darkened, and she subconsciously took a step back. A young man from the duo clan who jumped up from behind her could not help but cry out, "Why are you here? Why did he run into this little fiend again?" The young man's face showed a trace of horror. He took a few steps back and pointed at Arbor. What do you want to do?" Arbor couldn't be bothered with them. His gaze fell on the few ordinary people who were dragged up. Judging from their appearance, they seemed to be people from some merchant ship. A middle-aged man, who looked like a shopkeeper, was protecting a girl who was completely drenched and wrapped in a blanket. He stared at them with vigilant eyes. That girl was also tightly holding the hand of a 7 to 8-year-old child, who was dressed in brocade clothes and had a fair complexion, rosy lips and white teeth. Eldest young Sir Qin gave a look, and several servants immediately came forward with clean clothes and handkerchiefs. Chapter 48:30. Your clothes are all wet. Please come with us to change. Several people who looked like shop assistants thanked them profusely. A young woman even led her child forward and bowed gratefully to eldest Qin and company. Only then did she follow the servants into the passenger cabin to change. "Miss, why don't you go in and change as well?" The middle-aged man whispered to the delicate and pretty girl, who was wrapped in a blanket. The girl glanced warily at eldest young Sir Qin and company before her gaze landed on Arbor. In the end, she shook her head slightly. "Be careful, Uncle Gu." She could tell that these young masters and misses on the ship were not easy to deal with. Her father had already been eaten by the corpse fish at sea, so she could only rely on herself now. Soon, the commoners who had gone in to change their clothes walked out again and thanked eldest young Sir Qin and company again. "Everyone, can you tell us what happened?" Eldest young Sir Qin asked with a grin. "Young sir, our ship encountered such a huge man-eating shark. That miss said that this wasn't an ordinary man-eating shark." A woman holding a child pointed at Duo Shanmei and said, "Miss said that this was a huge. The young woman forgot her words and racked her brains, but she couldn't recall what Duo Shanmei had said. Huge man-eating shark. Naturally, Duo Shanmei did not need anyone to provide her with clothes. She had followed the servant into the inner cabin and retrieved her clothes from the inner world. Now that she had changed into clean clothes, she felt much better all over. Therefore, she was in the mood to chat with others. Oh, right. It's this huge man-eating shark. The young woman grasped her son's hand in horror and said hastily. When it charged over, we felt the entire ship shake. It was too scary. It's worthy of being the overlord of the ocean. Didn't your ship encounter it? Eldest young Sir Chin shook his head and said with a smile. It seems that we were rather lucky. The man-eating shark is so powerful. How did you escape? Arbor asked coldly. The girl wrapped in the blanket couldn't help but turn pale. You're suspecting us? Doubt. The young woman's face was filled with confusion. She quickly waved her hand and said, No, we didn't escape. At that time, our boat was capsized by a shark. We had no choice but to fall into the water. At first, I thought that Kuei and I were definitely going to die. Who knew that it would be so coincidental? Before the carcass shark could reach us, we were hit by a stream of water. At that time, many people were taken out, including me and my son. The woman recalled as she spoke. Sigh, it was so dangerous. Xiaomu glanced at her and saw that woman making a fuss and gesticulating with her hands in an extremely pretentious manner. Water flow. Yes, it was an extremely hot current. Many people who weren't slapped away were trapped in the current. If they weren't eaten by the huge wave of corpse fish below, then they would be cooked into shrimp. An old man nodded and confirmed the truth of the woman's words. I didn't expect this trip to be so dangerous. Originally, I just wanted to take the Diyuan merchant ship, but I didn't expect that. Chapter 48:31. That elderly man heaved a long sigh. His eyes appeared somewhat downcast, as if he was recalling some of his deceased companions. He recalled that the old owner of the Diyuan merchant ship had also died in this unexpected calamity. The elderly man couldn't help but sigh, and he turned to look at the girl wrapped in the blanket. Miss Fong, my condolences. That's right, Miss Fong. The dead can't be brought back to life, so you mustn't be too grieved. The young woman also grumbled. She then looked at the girl wrapped in the blanket and said, Miss Fong, the weather is turning cold now. It's uncomfortable for you to be soaking wet like this. How about I bring you over to change your clothes? Miss Fong and her brother were the same as them. They were ordinary people and didn't have their own inner world. This blanket was given to Miss Duo by a male cultivator beside her. He kindly lent her a blanket to wrap herself in after seeing that she was drenched from head to toe and didn't look too good with all her curves exposed. Miss Fong tightly grasped her brother's small hand. When she heard the boy sneeze twice, her gaze finally softened. She nodded and said to the woman, Thank you for your trouble, eldest sister-in-law Yang. Eldest sister-in-law Yang smiled and said, I. She turned around and said a few words to a boy servant on the ship before asking him to lead the way and accompany Miss Fong and her brother to change their clothes. Arbor glanced at them and said, I'm sleepy. During this period of time, she needed to recover her divine sense as soon as possible. After taking some pills, sleeping or meditating was the best way to digest the energy. Eldest young Sir Chin smiled at her. All right, then you go rest first. I'll make arrangements for these people. Arbor ignored him and grumbled in her mind. If he doesn't make arrangements for these people, do I have to make arrangements for them? The little fellow was used to being a hands-off shopkeeper. She returned to her room to rest and didn't care where eldest young Sir Chin had arranged for those people outside. By the time she finished taking the suppressing beard pill and meditated for a while and opened her eyes, the entire morning had already passed. It was time for a pleasant lunch again. Although the little stoic didn't say anything, her feet had already involuntarily walked towards the deck. After interacting with her for so long, the young sirs of the Chin estate all knew of this little stoic's strange habits. Anyway, no matter what, the little fellow would always appear on the deck every time it was mealtime for 3 meals a day. When the little stoic walked onto the deck, she raised her hand to rub her lower abdomen and inwardly said, Mom is going to eat. Baby, absorb it well. She had just walked to the deck when she heard a resentful voice. How can you arrange for Miss to live with Yang Deseo and the others? Young master, You can't live with those fellows either. At the very least, you should arrange a room for the two of them. Ling Ge, who was in the middle of a conversation, could not help but laugh out of anger. She immediately spoke rudely. We're not an inn and we're not charging you. There are only 2 rooms, one for the men and one for the women. If you don't like this, you can get off the boat by yourself. These people were really laughable. They were really troublesome. When they boarded the boat, they assumed that they were people with ulterior motives. At first, Miss Fong refused to follow the servants to change her clothes. Later on, she was so wet that she couldn't stand it anymore, so she followed the young woman, Yang Dasa, to change into clean clothes. When he was changing his clothes, his expression was very ugly. His face was full of disdain for the coarse clothes of the servants. Now that she had arranged a place for them to rest, trouble came again. Did they really think the whole world was their parents? You were already fished out, yet you still didn't know how to stop. Chapter 48-32. When Steward Gu of the Diyuan merchant ship heard Ling Ji's words, he quickly smoothed things over with a bitter smile. It's not that I don't know what's good for me. There's a reason for this. Miss Feng's brother is afraid of coming into contact with strangers, and is not suitable to stay with us men. Steward, please arrange another room. It's fine even if it's smaller. Just let the 2 of them live together. No. Ling Ge waved her hand impatiently. There are no extra rooms. Duo Shanmei rolled her eyes and thought to herself, it would be strange if there are no rooms. The 3 cabins to the left of the little crown princess are all empty. The little crown princess was staying on the 3rd floor of the ship. There were a total of 4 rooms above. She sneaked over to take a look, and saw that they were all empty. Xiaomu expressionlessly walked past the 2 people, and went to sit at the table to wait for food to be eaten. As for that sister-in-law Yang, her son Kuei-er, and a few of the Diyuan merchant ship's staff, they were already sitting at a small table at the side. When they heard that the owner of this ship had invited them over for a meal, they were very grateful. After all, they were penniless at the moment, and had nothing they wanted. The owner was too kind to be willing to do them a favor and arrange food and lodging for them after saving them. Sister-in-law Yang and her son, 2 other elders, and a few young people were all passengers of the Diyuan merchant ship. They had interacted with Miss Fong, Steward Gu, and the others for a long time, and had formed some friendships. Seeing that Steward Gu was quarreling with the owner's manservant, sister-in-law Yang, who was keen on meddling in other people's business, whispered to a staff member, "Why is Steward Gu quarreling with that young man? This isn't good. Hurry up and call him over." Duo Shanmei brought a few surviving forgetful Chuan Duo clan cultivators, and sat at the table at the side. When she heard that, she couldn't help but say coldly, "What else can they quarrel about? Isn't it just a matter of accommodation? Arranging for 7 or 8 of us to stay in one room. How can we stay in such a cramped place?" Sister-in-law Yang hurriedly waved her hand and said, "You can't say that. We should be endlessly grateful that someone saved us. The owner has already done his best to arrange food and lodging for us. How can you be so picky? Besides, I've seen the bunk. It's not too crowded. The beds are all clean." The 2 or 3 women beside eldest sister-in-law Yang nodded in agreement. They didn't have any objections. To be able to escape death, have a roof over their heads, and live comfortably with food and shelter was already good enough. Arbor was sitting a little further away from them, but the deck was only so big that she could hear what they were saying. 5th young Master Qin walked to her side, while carrying a plate of braised fish. "Don't mind them. Let eldest brother deal with these people. Hurry up and eat, then rest early." Arbor's little hand that was holding the fish paused slightly. She thought indignantly, "Do I look like someone who sleeps after eating?" For the past few days, she had given off such a feeling. After he finished eating, he went back to his room to sleep. After he had slept enough, he came out to continue eating. She didn't like to talk to people, and she didn't like to talk either. Sometimes, in order to make her talk, you would talk a lot, but she would look at you as if you were an idiot. You wouldn't be able to continue at all, and the conversation would come to an abrupt end. At this speed, we'll reach the vicinity of the Pond Lotus Sacred Land by tomorrow night. Do you want to enter that mystic realm together? The little stoic didn't bat an eyelid and feigned indifference. Up to you. Then how about you stay on this ship? The little emperor said impatiently. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Seeing her displeasure, the fifth young master hastily nodded. Okay. 10 o'clock. Chapter 48:33. Humph, of course she had to enter the mystic realm. If she didn't enter the mystic realm, how could she find Lian's soul and break away from them as soon as possible? The fifth young master smiled bashfully at her. I won't be able to take an afternoon nap in the mystic realm. Arbor? Do I look like someone who likes to nap so much? When the fifth young master saw her casting a sidelong glance at him, he hastily nodded sensibly and said, Then we'll see when the time comes. Jojo, eat more. Is this celery stir-fried not delicious? The little emperor replied expressionlessly. I don't like vegetables. When eldest young Master Qin walked over, he heard his fifth brother stuttering to the little stoic. But this green vegetable, you still have to eat a bit. The little stoic was impatient. Why are you so long-winded? She paused and then said with a humph, Bring it over. The fifth young master hastily brought the plate over. The eldest young master couldn't resist wanting to laugh, and walked over to greet her. Stoic. The little stoic. Bah, you're the stoic, your whole family is stoic. What do you plan to do with those people? She pretended to ask carelessly, and her chopsticks moved to the fish fillet on the side. Eldest young Master Qin was a bit amused. He picked up a clean pair of chopsticks, and tilted his head to look at her. Stoic, if you're worried about them, then say it directly. If you don't say it, how will they know your intentions, right? What do I have to worry about? The little crown princess stuck out her small head, and humphed nonchalantly. The eldest young master pursed his lips and smiled. Fine. You're not worried. But I'm worried, all right? Humph. When we reach the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm tomorrow, we'll definitely have to stay there for a while, the eldest young master said. At that time, we'll have the ship send them to their destination, and then come back to pick us up. After hearing the eldest young master's plan, the little stoic didn't utter another word. Eldest young Master Qin knew that she was reassured, so he smiled and didn't expose her. He used his chopsticks to pick up a piece of braised fish, and slowly put it into his mouth, praising in passing. Fifth brother, your culinary skills are getting better and better. Fifth young Master Qin was a bit embarrassed from the praise, and he hastily waved his hand. Just make do with it. Arbor looked at the fifth young master curiously. You cooked it? The five young masters hurriedly nodded. The little emperor said proudly. It was very rare for him to praise her. It's indeed not bad. Fifth young Master Qin's pair of fawn-like eyes suddenly brightened. Duo Shanmei sat at the dining table, with a complicated expression. She held a white steamed bun in her hand and chewed without tasting the food. Her eyes would occasionally glance at the nearby little stoic. Compared to the crude food on their table, the little stoic's table had chicken, duck, fish and meat, as well as pastries and soup. It was simply too sumptuous. She chewed on the steamed bun like she was chewing wax. She glanced at the 3 side dishes on the table with disdain. Pickled vegetables, shredded radish, and a small plate of soybeans. Speaking of which, these days were really unlucky for her. Ever since they were thrown into the sea by the little stoic on that deserted island, and had their spiritual senses and cultivation sealed, their successive encounters were simply indescribable. When they were truly unlucky, they could even stuff their teeth with cold water. Not only was their inner worlds plundered clean by that scoundrel stoic, but they would also encounter several corpse fish from time to time, as they floated on the surface of the sea in fear and trepidation. Fortunately, even though they had lost their cultivation, they still had some defensive artifacts on them. They relied on these items to barely survive. Chapter 48:34. She now knew that the owner of this ship was the Qin estate's young master. Previously, when they were rescued and thrown into the water by the eldest young master, she felt that this matter was definitely related to that expressionless face. Without cultivation and spiritual senses, It was actually extremely dangerous to drift on the sea for a few days. Fortunately, they were lucky and didn't encounter a large group of zombie fish. Otherwise, it would be difficult for the Wangchuan duo family to even protect the remaining 10 survivors. After drifting in fear and trepidation for several days, they finally encountered the Diyuan merchant ship and were rescued. They didn't expect to encounter a crazy attack from a giant zombie shark the next day. It wasn't entirely true to say that she duo Shanmei was extremely unlucky. At least she was still alive now. Even if she was lucky, she couldn't have been allowed to drift on the sea for so many miserable days and still be eating salted vegetables and steamed buns. Hey, why are you making so much noise? A kind voice came from behind Ling Ge. Ling Ge was annoyed by the pestering steward Gu, and her expression turned ugly. When she heard his voice, she turned her head and looked over together with steward Gu. What entered her sight was a pot-bellied old man in his 60s with a smile like a Mithriya. His sparse forehead was smooth, and he wore a yuanbao hat. When he walked, his big belly bounced up and down, making him look extremely kind. Ling Ge hurriedly bowed and respectfully called out, "Grandfather Luo." "Ling Ge, how can you be so rude to a guest?" The old man smiled kindly and turned to the red-faced Gu Dazhong. "This guest, I'm really sorry. What did I do that made you dissatisfied?" When the old man said this, Gu Dazhong rubbed his hands uneasily. After all, the other party saved them first. Now that he was arguing with the host for so long because of the accommodation, it wasn't very kind of him. However, for the sake of his young mistress and young master, he had to bite the bullet and be this annoying person. Gu Dazhong told the old steward about the young master's situation. Elder Luo smiled and nodded. "Then how about this? There's a small compartment next to the bunk. Usually, it's used to store the servants' clothes and sundries. I'll order people to clean up this small room for young mistress and young master to live in. Is that okay?" Gu Dazhong heaved a sigh of relief and nodded gratefully. "Thank you for your trouble, old steward." Sure. Elder Luo replied with a smile. Omega Kotoku walked down the stairs and glanced at the people standing at the staircase. "Elder Luo, what's the matter?" "It's fine, second young master. This old servant can arrange everything here," Elder Luo said with a smile. When second young master Qin heard this, he nodded apathetically and walked past them. Miss Fong, who had been standing by the side from the beginning to the end and waiting for Steward Gu to finish negotiating with the other party, held her younger brother's small hand tightly. Only then did he walk forward and whisper to Steward Gu, "Uncle Gu, what did they say?" She and her younger brother were ordinary people, and their hearing was average. From such a distance, she only knew that Uncle Gu had been talking to someone with an excited expression, but she did not know what they were talking about. Lieutenant General Gu repeated Elder Luo's words to the young lady. Miss Fong's face showed some disdain. "Uncle Gu, you want us to stay in the storage room where the servants store their clothes and hats?" Gu Dazhong's face also showed that he was in a difficult position. "Young mistress, it's been hard on you and young master. It might take a few days. It'll be fine when we arrive." Chapter 48:35. Miss Fong also knew that it was impossible for her to negotiate with the owner at this time. Otherwise, she would be even more detestable. The girl smiled awkwardly and said softly, "No, it's not grievance. This is the only way for us to go through such an emergency." Gu Dazhong nodded and heaved a sigh of relief. If Miss asked him to negotiate with the owner about changing rooms, he was afraid that he would really annoy the other party and throw them off the boat. People have no choice but to lower their heads when they are under someone else's roof. Miss Fong sighed sadly, and her gaze seemed to glance in Duo Shanmei's direction. "Miss, why don't you go and eat some steamed buns?" Gu Dazhong hurriedly said. "Let's go over quickly and eat something first. Miss and young master will have to suffer for this period of time. When we reach the Jubilee City and contact the shopkeeper of the branch, you and young master will not have to suffer anymore." Although he said that, Gu Dazhong himself knew that this matter was still a little uncertain. Their master had died on the way, and the entire Fong clan had lost their backbone. Just this young master and young miss, who knew nothing about business and did not understand the ways of the world. Wanting to take over the branch into Jubilee City, this matter was still a little uncertain. Miss Fong wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes and held her brother's hand, saying, "Uncle Gu, why is my life so hard?" Gu Dazhong could not help but sigh when he heard that. "Miss, let's not talk about this first. Look, there are not many steamed buns left on the table. Let's hurry over and get a few." When they walked over, they realized that the steamed buns on the table were already gone, and there were only 1 or 2 soybeans and 2 or 3 salted vegetables left on the side dishes. Gu Dazhong was stunned. When they looked over from afar, there were still some leftover food on the table. How could it be that in just a few steps there was nothing left? Miss Fong looked at the mess on the table and thought about her wealthy life back home. She sighed even more sadly. "Forget it, Uncle Gu. Let's go back to our room first." A Wangchuan duo clansman at the table smiled awkwardly at Gu Dazhong. He coughed and took out 2 steamed buns from his inner world. "Shopkeeper Gu, take this and eat it." Miss Fong glanced at the cultivators with a face full of resentment. She bit her lip and pulled her brother away. As cultivators, if they couldn't eat, they could store some food for themselves. It was all her fault for not being able to cultivate. She didn't even have 1 or 2 inner worlds. It was impossible for her to store food like others. Seeing Miss Fong leave with tears in her eyes, the practitioners felt even more embarrassed. They hurriedly stood up and said uneasily, Fong, I saw that no one wanted to eat. Only then did we put away the remaining food." Yes, so as not to waste it. I didn't expect that Miss Fong and her brother haven't eaten yet." The other party coughed awkwardly. Miss Fong's sorrowful and pitiful expression just now was too pitiful. Duo Shanmei was speechless. This Miss Fong shouldn't have left crying over a steamed bun, right? She reflexively glanced at the little stoic again. The stoic face was very perceptive and immediately shot a glance at him, meeting his gaze head-on. Duo Shanmei's heart skipped a beat, and her eyes narrowed slightly. These past few days, she didn't dare to appear in front of the little girl. After all, the Wangchuan duo clan and the little girl still had unresolved grievances and grudges. Chapter 4836. There was no guarantee that the little stoic would remember something and want to settle accounts with her when the time came. Just like now, when she was being stared at by the girl's cold eyes. Duo Shanmei felt a trace of uneasiness from the bottom of her heart. Some thoughts flashed through his mind. For example, the Forgotten River Duo clan had joined forces with the Dragon clan to encircle the little girl before. Another example was her family's Duo Shanming. Right now, he seemed to still be imprisoned on a deserted island by the little stoic, and his whereabouts were unknown. Xiaomu merely swept an apathetic glance at Duo Shanmei before retracting her gaze. While sleeping in the Datong bunk at night, Duo Shanmei kept recalling the little stoic's cold, electrifying gaze. She repeatedly wondered if this stoic would come to seek revenge on her in the middle of the night. It was unknown when it had started to rain outside. The raindrops gradually became heavier, and when they fell on the window lattice, it made a pitter-patter sound. This Duo Shanmei had always been suspicious and felt that there was a shadow floating by outside the window. She grabbed a random sword and hugged it close to her chest. Just like that, she spent most of the night in a daze. Just as he was about to fall asleep, he suddenly felt the hull of the boat shake. Duo Shanmei grabbed her sword warily and jumped up yelling, "Who is it?" Eldest sister-in-law Yang was sleeping beside her. After being yelled at by Duo Shanmei, she jolted awake and sat up straight. She called out sleepily, "What's going on?" Dong dong dong. When the maid knocked on the door, Arbor had already dressed up and got out of bed. In fact, she was sleeping with her clothes on, so she didn't need to dress up. 2 maids hurriedly came in and said, "Miss Chiao, please get ready. We might have to change ships. It's raining cats and dogs outside. I'm afraid the ship won't be able to hold on for much longer." This boat was a 3-story pleasure boat. Usually, it would be fine to sit on it and play with the wind and rain. But now that it was raining in the middle of the night, it couldn't withstand the beating of the rain. Arbor replied with an, "Oh," and didn't say anything else. She activated her eggshell shield to block the wind and rain, and followed the 2 maids to the deck. From afar, she could see that Duo Shanmei, sister-in-law Yang, and the others were also called to the deck by the steward. There was no shelter on the deck, and most of the people were exposed to the wind and rain. When Miss Fong glanced at the little stoic, a faint emotion flashed through her eyes. She sighed sadly. Is this the difference between ordinary people and practitioners? Duo Shanmei couldn't take it anymore and rolled her eyes. Actually, as long as you have the money, you can also buy this defensive spiritual weapon. But without spiritual energy, how can I open the defensive barrier? Miss Fong sighed again. She picked up her handkerchief and wiped her face. It was unknown whether she was wiping rainwater or tears. Duo Shanmei rolled her eyes again. Can you stop being so sad? It wasn't that the black market didn't have defensive spiritual weapons that didn't require spiritual power. It's just that the price is a little higher. What's more, this is not the time. Hurry up and keep up. Let's save our lives first. He was still in the mood to wallow in melancholy. Who knew what would happen later? When Duo Shanmei saw the little girl, she secretly observed her expression. The little stoic looked refreshed and unperturbed. When Duo Shanmei saw that expression, she felt a bit of a headache, and her mind whirled rapidly. So it turned out that she had been tormenting herself for most of the night, paranoid that the stoic would come back to kill her. While she didn't dare to sleep all this time, this fellow probably slept to her heart's content, right? Crash. A high wave hit them head-on. The eldest young sir's figure appeared beside the little stoic like a ghost. He raised his hand to block and turned his head to say seriously, "Change boats." Chapter 48-37. The little crown princess uttered an "oh" again and glanced at him. She saw that this guy didn't activate his defensive spiritual weapon, but not a single drop of rain touched him. Upon closer inspection, she saw that any rainwater that touched his body was evaporated by a faint white mist. Upon seeing this, the little stoic harumphed. He was showing off his cultivation realm. If Sir Jojo advanced to the transcendent divine realm, he could walk in the rain every day without getting a drop of rain on him. Eldest young Sir Qin inexplicably sensed that the little girl's mood had turned sour again, and she glared fiercely at him with her beautiful eyes. How baffling! How had he offended this little emperor? Hurry and follow me. The eldest young sir wanted to pull her, but discovered that there was nowhere to reach. The little stoic was completely encased in a round eggshell, so there was really no way to pull her. The eldest young sir secretly twitched his mouth before saying, "Xiaobao, hurry and follow me. You go first." At this time, that old steward Luo of Ford Town also hastily ran over and rushed to eldest young Sir Qin in the rain. He said anxiously, "Young sir, why are you still here? Hurry and leave. There are many corpse fish gathered under the ship, and water has already entered the lower cabin." When everyone heard that the school of corpse fish had arrived, their eyes burned with anxiety, and the children even started crying out of fear. Sister-in-law Yang hastily embraced her son and covered his mouth, saying, "Don't be scared, don't be scared. Child, we will be able to leave this place very soon." Arbor turned to glance at the mother and son before saying to eldest young Sir Qin with knitted brows, "Hurry and leave. Where are the other ships? Let them leave together." Okay. Eldest young Sir Qin nodded helplessly and sent a look to the boy servants beside him. Someone then scrambled forward to help the women pick up the children and beckoned for them to quickly follow. At this time, the ship was already swaying left and right in the wind and rain, seemingly on the verge of collapsing. Several hundred feet away, a large black ship completely covered in iron armor had silently stopped in the sea at some point in time. Seawater surged up and down in all directions, and a gust of wind blew Qiao Mu's tied-up long hair into disarray. His moon-white clothes fluttered in the wind in the dark night. Omega Kotoku jumped off the opposite ship and jumped onto the deck. He frowned and stared at Arbor. "Let's go. What are you waiting for?" He wanted to go forward and grab her, but just like eldest young master, he realized that there was no place for him to grab her. He looked at her speechlessly. "Can you go there by yourself?" Arbor threw him a cold look. "Bah, just this bit of distance. Can this lord be stumped? Did he think she was a good-for-nothing?" Ignoring them, Arbor rose into the air on its own. Then, everyone saw this guy wrapped in a transparent cover, rolling in the air and rolling over. Eldest young Sir Chin twitched his mouth and silently shut his mouth. Why did he feel that the little stoic was a little comical? Arbor landed gracefully on the opposite boat. The fifth young master hurriedly ran over with a large towel in his hand. In the end, he realized that the little girl didn't need to wipe it at all. Her eggshell defensive barrier that could block the wind and rain was really unique. Dugaling couldn't resist laughing. When he saw the little stoic's gaze sweep over, he hastily shut his mouth and coughed lightly. Is everyone all right? Your ship is too lousy, the little stoic said indignantly. Wasn't it funny to have to move the ship in the middle of the night? Chapter 48:38. Quickly come over and take a look. Dugaling beckoned her over. Arbor quickly strolled over and leaned close to the side of the ship to take a look. A gigantic carcass shark abruptly scuttled out of the water. After scuttling several meters high, it smashed into the ship with a dull thud. The little stoic turned around to take a look. Without another word, she snatched a bow from an attendant's hand and shot it twice reflexively. With a whoosh, this gigantic carcass shark smashed into the water with a bang, creating a splash. Did you hit it? Did you hit it? Several attendants excitedly asked as they surrounded him. Arbor knitted his brows, inwardly thinking, how could it be that simple? That gigantic carcass shark looked to be as big as two liger beasts, and its swimming speed was astonishingly fast. Thump! A tremor came from the lower cabin. At this time, eldest young Sir Chin had already swiftly boarded the ship. He glanced at the little stoic. You guys stay here and don't move. I'll go down to take a look. Arbor cast him a sidelong glance and silently took a small step back. Don't worry and go. Eldest young Sir Chin. It wasn't like he was going to die. What do you mean don't worry? And go? Why did he feel that the words coming out of this fellow's mouth were so unpleasant? Dugaling and the fatty with the purple gold hammer also flashed over and said in unison, Eldest young sir, this subordinate will go with you. Eldest young Sir Chin didn't refuse them. The three of them jumped into the sea one after another, and their figures were instantly drowned by the waves. On the other side, several Qin estate servants were carrying sister-in-law Yang, Kuei and the Fong family siblings towards the four-story ship. Miss Fong's pretty face was extremely pale from the cold. That young Sir Fong was struggling and screaming in the servants' hands, as if he didn't like being touched by the servants at all. The Qin estate's attendant also had a very unsightly expression. At first, he planned to carry young Sir Fong, but that child writhed in his arms, as if he had seen a scourge, and didn't like him approaching. This attendant had no choice but to grab young Sir Fong's collar with one hand instead. Who would have thought that when he flew out of the original ship, the child who was courting death began to wail like a ghost and howl like a wolf in midair. As he shouted, he wantonly shook his body. The attendant was pushed down by his twisting body, and at this moment, the carcass shark emerged from the bottom of the water, opened its huge mouth, and bit at the back of his foot. The Zither estate's servants, who were on the four-story ship, all cried out in alarm when they saw this thrilling scene. Akai picked up a long bamboo pole and shouted at the servant who was holding young Master Fong, who was swaying left and right on the surface of the sea. Nyo, quick, quick, quick! Quickly! Come here quickly! Nyozi felt a gust of fishy wind coming from below. In the nick of time, he took a deep breath and jumped up with young Master Fong. He stepped on the bamboo pole handed over by Akai and borrowed the strength to jump onto the deck of the ship. At the same time, the carcass shark spat out a ball of dark red mucus, which landed on the railing of the ship and corroded half of the railing. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo, big sister, big sister. The young master of the Fong family cried as he threw himself at his big sister. Miss Fong hurriedly hugged him. Thinking of the dangerous scene just now, she couldn't stop wiping her tears. The siblings were crying so hard that the servant named Nyo was almost angered to death. He opened his mouth and scolded the siblings. In the future, if you want to court death, don't implicate others. You think I want to bring him here? Chapter 48:39. If it weren't for the young master's orders, who would want to bring along such a jinx? You can't come over yourself, and you're still so unpresentable even if someone else brings you along. If you want to die, then die further away. Don't fucking implicate others. Alright, Ernyozi, why are you getting so angry with a child? This child is probably scared silly, and he's quite frightened right now. Forget it. Several servants on the side hastily stepped forward to mediate. Afu also followed up with a few words of comfort. He turned to look at the siblings hugging each other and sighed. He said to the embarrassed manager Gu, "Watch them." Little young Master Fong kept trembling in his sister's arms and whimpered, "Sister, it hurts." While they were bickering, Duo Shanmei walked up and yanked little young Master Fong out of Miss Fong's arms. The siblings screamed involuntarily. Little young Master Fong covered his head and scurried away like a rat, burrowing straight into his sister's arms. "Don't move." Duo Shanmei bellowed and forcefully tore apart little young Master Fong's pants. On the exposed calf, everyone could clearly see a few small red dots that seemed to have been burned, distributed on that leg. "What are you doing?" Miss Fong shrieked and hastily covered her brother's leg with a blanket. However, Arbor's voice sounded from the side. "He's been poisoned by corpse poison, and must be treated as soon as possible." "What?" Miss Fong looked at Arbor in astonishment, her eyes full of incomprehension. "It's very obvious that he was sprayed on a few spots by the corpse-devouring shark's mucus." Arbor hinted at the Qin estate guard beside him. That guard only had a flash of inspiration, and he immediately drew his sword and took a few steps forward. Miss Fong was stunned. She hugged her brother tightly and cried out in alarm. What are you guys doing? What do you want to do? Do you want to leave him with half a leg or save his life? Arbor asked sternly. You should rejoice that this corpse poison has just seeped into his body through his skin and hasn't had time to spread throughout his body. It was rare for Duo Shanmei to feel that the little stoic's words were reasonable. She nodded and said, Miss Fong, don't hesitate. As long as you chop off half of your younger brother's leg before the corpse poison spreads, you'll be able to preserve his life. As if someone had stepped on her tail, Miss Fong screamed in panic. No, absolutely not. My younger brother cannot be a cripple. He still has to inherit the Fong family in the future and bring glory to the Fong family. Arbor couldn't help but roll his eyes. He secretly complained in his heart, you're about to die, and you still want to show off? You are all cultivators with remarkable abilities. You must have a way to save my brother without harming him. Xiaomu turned around and left, not even leaving behind an extra word. She had always believed that if she could help, she would reach out and help others. It was not a problem for her to help with some small matters, as long as it was within her ability. However, this did not mean that she could tolerate others stepping on her nose and ordering her around for no reason. Just like practicing medicine, she would do her best to help those who sought medical treatment in front of her. However, if you didn't trust her ability and still nagged her while ordering her around, then sorry, scram. That was all she had to say. She still had to choose her own path in the future. Since that Miss Fong had chosen to save her younger brother's leg, then she could do whatever she wanted. A trace of grievance flashed through Miss Fong's eyes. Chapter 4840. She and her brother were both ordinary people. If they asked for help from a cultivator, what could they do if it was just a small matter? That stoic-faced girl looked too cold-hearted. She actually said that she wanted to chop off her younger brother's leg. Was there no other way to compromise? She didn't feel bad about chopping off her younger brother's leg, right? Duo Shanmei couldn't help but be speechless. This stoic girl was still so infuriating. She didn't want to chat after rebuking someone, and immediately turned to leave, not even sparing the other party a glance. Duo Shanmei sighed. Say it. Do you want your younger brother's life or his leg? If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have acted in the first place. When Nyozi carried this young sir from that ship to this ship, if he didn't act up and smoothly reach this ship, wouldn't everything be fine? Young Sir Fong's leg was still chopped off in the end. When young Sir Fong fainted from the pain, Miss Fong also fainted on the ground from the shock of seeing blood in her eyes an hour later. The eldest young Sir and Fatty Duga Ling leaped out of the water and back onto the deck. The little stoic sized them up and asked without batting an eyelid, Killed? Eldest young Sir Qin shook his head sullenly. This corpse-devouring shark is extremely intelligent. It immediately dived into the depths of the sea when it saw that the situation wasn't right. We didn't chase after it to avoid delaying our journey. Arbor nodded and didn't say anything else. Her room was arranged to be on the 4th floor, and the bedding, and utensils were all prepared in the room. The little stoic wasn't a picky person, and was never particular when she was outside. After she closed the door and bolted it, she turned around and slowly walked to the table, pouring herself a cup of hot water. Her small hands slowly crawled across the table, her fingertips fiddling with thunder fireballs one by one. A faint haze covered the little stoic's face. Due to this storm, their ship deviated far from the course, and had to make a detour for an extra day. Fortunately, everything went smoothly afterward, and they didn't encounter any other unforeseen events. They also didn't run into that corpse-devouring shark with a bronze skull and iron bones. On this day, the wind was gentle and the sun was bright, and the sea was calm. Looking from afar, a golden luster danced in the depths of his eyes. 5th young Master Qin pointed ahead. Do you see the golden beach ahead? The entrance to the Pond Lotus Sacred Land is at the peak of that mountain. Arbor narrowed his eyes and looked over. From afar, the small island looked like a lying motionless tortoise. The tortoise's back was high, and it was a mountain covered in fine golden sand. It was no wonder that when he looked at it from here, his eyes were filled with a golden color, and were swaying like quicksand. The Pool Lotus Sage Land is on this sea turtle island? 5th young master couldn't help but cough lightly and correct him. The outside world calls this island Lotus Pond Island. The little stoic was instantly displeased. It's clearly a turtle island. Where are the lotuses? There are no lotuses anywhere. There was only an old turtle lying there, unable to crawl. Under the golden sand it was completely bare. Other than some uniquely shaped reefs, there was only sand. Jojo, we still have to wait here for 2 to 3 days. Other than Forget Chuan and Murong, we've already obtained the keys to the other 4 families. The Murong clan has agreed to give us the keys, but they want to send 3 of their disciples to go with us. Eldest young Master Qin said, I've already agreed. Arbor uttered an "oh." Eldest young Master Qin looked at her with a laugh. Could it be that Jojo has never heard of Forget Chuan and Murong? Chapter 48-41. Murong. Arbor's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't say anything and merely glanced at eldest young Sir Qin. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't help but nod with a chuckle. That's what you're thinking. Your master, Murong Sun, is from the Murong family of Wangchuan. Arbor blinked. Speaking of which, you should be somewhat related to the Murong clan of Wangchuan. How is it? They should arrive the day after tomorrow. Aren't you a bit excited? Arbor glanced at him without a ripple of emotion. Although he didn't say anything, his disdainful gaze expressed it very clearly. Who the hell knew what was going on with the Murong clan of Wangchuan? Sir Jojo wasn't someone who liked to go around acknowledging relatives. So, aren't you a bit excited? Arbor rolled his eyes before leaping up and flying toward the beach. Eldest young Sir Qin rubbed his chin and pursed his lips. Always so tsundere. You clearly have some expectations, yet you like to act like you don't care. You really need to discipline that wife of yours when you're free. The little radish around 5 or 6 years old said to Emolian gravely as he sprawled on Xunwu's back. Of all the things she could do, she just had to make these messy transformation talismans. Look at what she's turned me into, huh? It had already been several days, but his little lousy body still hadn't recovered. He was currently paranoid, and couldn't help but seriously suspect that Emolian was purposely tricking him and purposely turning him into this short figure. Xunwu propped him up on his back and couldn't resist saying, We've already been together for so long, so we should trust each other a bit more. As if I'd trust you. The little serpent glared at the 2 men beside him with a huff. Look at what you've been doing these past few days, wandering around aimlessly after entering the city. Don't blame me for not warning you. With my powerful divine conscience, I can sense that at least 4 or 5 groups of people have already noticed you. Xunwu patted the child's back. Wrong, it's us. The little snake was so angry that he punched Xunwu's head. Walk properly and don't talk so much nonsense. Ma Shurchin looked back from time to time. How are we going to deal with the people behind us? These people have been eyeing us for a few days now. It's probably because you guys are too ostentatious in the city and have attracted their attention. Do you know what these two fellows have done that would incur the wrath of man and God? Ever since they entered the city, they had done this kind of thing every day. For example, squatting in front of a roasted rat stall and eating hot sweet potatoes. She really didn't know what that dignified and elegant Prince Emo always kept in his storage talisman. There were roasted sweet potatoes, spicy dried tofu, oranges, and everything else. In the city of Sin, roasted crispy mouse was considered a luxury food. It was hard to imagine that these two cheaters would actually eat roasted sweet potatoes in front of other people's stalls. What was even more infuriating was that yesterday, they actually sat in a stone pavilion by the street, toasting each other and drinking wine, accompanied by 2 or 3 exquisite side dishes. After that, everyone was given a bowl of egg and pork noodles. Was this something that a human could do? Before entering the city, Shenwu had already reminded these two cheaters that the resources in the city were extremely scarce, and none of their belongings could be seen. Chapter 48-42. Alright. Whatever Shenwu reminded them of, they would do the exact opposite. Shenwu reminded them for nothing. The number of crazy things these two had done could not be counted with 10 fingers. It was normal for them to attract 5 or 6 groups of people to follow them. At this moment, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal took out a wine flask from his inner world and followed behind Emo Lien. He took a sip of wine to calm his nerves as they walked forward. Emo Lien, there are more and more people following us. Then why did you freaking show off your apricot wine? Is this person crazy? It's fine. Just like we said yesterday, enter the alley in front. Emo Lien nodded and quickly walked to the stone alley on the side. Ma Shurchin immediately followed after him, intentionally or unintentionally turning around to glance behind him. Shenwu hurriedly followed them in. Now that he knew Prince Mo's identity, he had a blind trust in His Highness. He always felt that Prince Emo would cheat anyone, but probably not his teammates. Has this kid always cheated others like this? The little snake pursed his lips and could not help but say, "It depends on the situation," Yuan Shurchin answered casually, then looked at him with a smile. "What? Are you scared?" "Why would I be scared of him?" The little snake puffed up his cheeks and snorted. "If I recover, I can be a great help to you." Yuan Shurchin smiled and looked at him without saying anything. Zualanshan saw this guy's eyes, and his heart instantly became uneasy. It can't be right? Looking at Yuan Shurchin's eyes, this black-bellied gaze, could it be that he wanted him to stay like this until they got out of the undersea abyss? Are you still brooding over what happened before? The little snake keenly sensed that the attack at the undersea abyss entrance might not be over yet. This Prince Emo was really not a good person. Why was he always holding a grudge? Yuan Shurchin smiled and patted his head. "Don't worry. One day I'll take care of you." Yuan Shurchin smiled meaningfully at him. "When we fight later, follow Shenwu and don't run too far." After all, with his current physique, if he were to fight, he would be pressed to the ground and beaten up. The little snake looked at them speechlessly. Judging from the attitude of these two black-hearted people, they really wanted to lure all the people from the city of Sin here and get rid of them in one fell swoop. He sincerely sympathized with the unlucky ones. This was clearly an act of pulling a line to fish. How could he have fallen for it? The people of the city of Sin had too much faith in themselves. As Emo Lien and He Chen turned into the stone alley, several groups of people looked at each other, then immediately chased after them without any explanation. In the city of Sin, food was the most precious luxury. They would often fight to the death for a bit of vegetables or a mouthful of meat. All the inner world items taken from the sinkhole had to be handed over to GC. After extorting them layer by layer, the amount of food they could obtain was very little. These people lived in the fear of starvation day and night. Many of them were ordinary people. When they were unbearably hungry, they could eat anything. The group of people swarmed into the stone alley. Although they felt a little uneasy, they did not feel fear or dread. In the city of Sin, outsiders with higher cultivation would be more unlucky and miserable. Chapter 48-43. So what was there to be afraid of? They were all ordinary people. Could it be that they couldn't win in numbers? The first group of people rushed into the alley and saw Emolien and Hichin at a glance. They were standing in the same spot and looking at them calmly, being stared at by those two pairs of dark eyes. The people who chased after them felt guilty and panicked for no reason. However, they forcibly steadied the billowing waves in their hearts, and they even sent out a representative who looked rather pretentious to come forward and converse with Emolien and Hichin. Did the two of you come from above? The man pointed up and asked with a smile. Are you new here? After all, they had not seen these new faces 3 days ago. Hichin smiled and glanced at them without saying a word. What a coincidence. The person who spoke in front of them was someone they had met once when they were in the deprivation sinkhole. His name seemed to be Omuri. At that time, he was following behind the leader of the worshippers at the sinkhole. He seemed to be a small leader in the city of Sin. With Emolien's photographic memory, she had already recognized Omuri's identity with a glance. But they had changed their faces, so the other party would definitely not recognize them. Emolien and Hichin acted as if they had never seen Omuri. She glanced at them coldly and said, "Get out of the way. My friends, why aren't you answering?" Behind Omuri, a skinny man walked out. His deep-set eyes were filled with hostility as he stared at them. His eyes were filled with greed as he glanced back and forth between the two of them. There was definitely something strange about the inner worlds of these two people. In such a place, they could actually take out 2 bowls of hot noodle soup. They had never cooked anything before, so there was definitely something strange about it. The inner worlds of these two people should be quite big and filled with many resources. Even if they couldn't take all of it for themselves, as long as they could get a small part of it, it would definitely make their lives easier in the short term. This kind of hope was really tempting, so much so that for such a goal, they did not hesitate to take the risk. Omuri and the others didn't make the first move. Instead, the other 2 groups of people who followed them rushed over and attacked Emolien and the others. The rich and varied resources in their inner worlds were simply too attractive to these people. Yuan Shurchen and Emolien naturally wouldn't be courteous to them. He didn't reject anyone who came and gave them a violent beating. After venting his anger, he asked Shen Wu to count the number of people lying on the ground and wailing. He found a few ropes and tied them all up. Yuan Shurchen stepped forward and kicked Omori. He then asked with a smile, "Hand over your waist token that allows you to enter the Grand Lord's mansion." Omuri's face turned pale as he shook his head. Just as he was about to argue, he saw Yuan Shurchen kick the person beside him. "If he doesn't want to, you do it. Hand it over, and I'll let you live." The man's face turned pale, and he trembled as he took out a token from his waist. Seeing this, Omuri couldn't help but scold. "Do you really think you can survive after you hand it over? If you dare to betray Grand Lord GC, you will die." Yuan Shurchen ignored him and directly punched his abdomen. This punch made Omuri feel that his dantian was shaking along with his blood and chi. It was especially terrifying. Omuri took off the token from his waist and trembled as he handed it to Yuan Shurchen. Chapter 48-44. Don't kill me. Omuri stammered, his entire body trembling. "Is there a password for entering and exiting the City Lord's mansion?" Omuri's eyes flickered slightly. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked at him with a smile. "Don't lie. I hate it when people lie. People who lie usually don't have a good ending. I'll tell you everything. Yes, there are 7 passwords. Different passwords are given to different people." Omuri quickly explained all the passwords, including the details. Then, he looked at the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal with fear and trepidation. My lord, now can we leave?" Yuan Shurchen turned to look at Emolien with a smile. "How should we deal with them?" Omuri and the others' hearts sank slightly. They wanted to gather their chi, but they were suppressed by a strong pressure. It was impossible for them to escape this place. So these people were really fishing. After hooking a group of fools, they were going to deal with them? Since they have no value, let's kill them. When Omuri heard the ordinary-looking middle-aged man say this, he could feel the cold murderous intent in his voice from a distance. I think it would be better to sell them to people who make rat meat. Yuan Shurchen joked, looking at Omuri and the others with a deep gaze. That would attract too much attention. Emolian said faintly. The little snake asked incredulously, "What do you mean?" Were all humans speaking in such a tone? They were clearly talking about entering and exiting the Grand Suzerain GC's mansion. Why did they suddenly talk about rat meat? Shenwu pondered for a moment, then sighed. They are talking about those slaves. The little snake boy could not keep up with their divergent thoughts. He could not understand what they were talking about. Humans were really a strange species. They spoke in such a bold and imaginative way. Shenwu looked at him speechlessly. Can't you use your brain? Are you going to believe whatever others say? Don't you think it's strange that there are people selling roasted rat meat in the streets and alleys of this city? What's strange? Shenwu suddenly had a feeling of not wanting to talk to this idiot. It was a little tiring to explain. Although this human snake had lived for hundreds of years, it didn't have intelligence. Its intelligence was probably that of a 5 or 6-year-old child, right? What do you mean? The snake man shouted angrily. Zhichun and Mo Lian and Shenwu all looked at him with indescribable gazes. It made one's heart feel stifled. How can there be so much rat meat? Shenwu couldn't help but roll his eyes and cry out. It's just a sheep's head under the guise of dog meat. The so-called roasted rat meat was just some slaves killed in the Kars cave mining area. Shenwu took a deep breath. In the end, he was still somewhat unable to continue speaking. This kind of thing was really cruel. But in a place like this, any kind of cruelty seemed to be normal. Most of the time, in order to survive, some people would probably do even more earth-shattering and cruel things. The snake man was stunned for a moment. He couldn't help but exclaim, "You humans are really too scary. You can really eat anything." Chanwu rolled his eyes at him, too lazy to continue talking to him. If he wanted to find a way out of this underwater abyss, he first had to deal with this group of troublesome people in the city of Sin. After that, he was able to settle down and search around the area. No matter what, he should be able to find a way out. Chapter 48-45. The Morong clan only sent 3 young men and women on this trip. Other than that, no one else came along. After the 3 of them boarded the boat, eldest young Serchin led them towards the little Stoic and 5th young Serchin's side with a smile. Stoic, come and meet Forget Chuan and Murong's guests. Murong Yen and Murong Zhao were both 27 or 28 years old, and were the cream of the crop among the clan's younger generation. Murong Fei was about the same age as the little Stoic, around 17 or 18 years old. She was lively and active by nature. This was the first time the little girl saw so many people, so she wasn't the least bit afraid of strangers. When her round eyes looked at the little Stoic, they involuntarily brightened. The girl in front of her had a face as pure as snow and jade, which was rarely seen in this world, so she couldn't resist taking a few more glances. At the same time, the little Stoic was also expressionlessly looking at Miss Murong Fei. Her gaze landed on her, as if she was looking at something through her small face. Murong Fei and Murong Sun were truly aunt and niece. Their appearances were 40% to 50% similar. When Arbor saw this girl for the first time, he felt a sense of familiarity spontaneously arising. It was as if his master had pushed open that ice-cold ice coffin and quietly walked to her side. I think I've seen you somewhere before. Murong Fei finally couldn't resist saying after hesitating for a moment. Apologies, my younger sister Fei didn't disturb this miss, right? Murong Yen hastily apologized when he saw the little Stoic's taut face. His younger sister always liked to find something to talk about, and could strike up a conversation with anyone. Unfortunately, not everyone liked to chat idly with others. For example, this bright-eyed little girl in front of him seemed to dislike the 3 of them. From the moment they met until now, he hadn't seen the little girl reveal half a smile. Thump thump thump. A wave of hurried footsteps approached from afar. Gu Dazhong saw Murong Yen and his siblings with a glance, and immediately welcomed them with a beaming smile. It really is you, young Sir Murong. Arbor originally wanted to find this Miss Murong Fei to speak a few words, and ask her if she knew Murong Sun. Gu Dazhong's sudden interruption made the little Stoic a bit more displeased in her heart. However, Looking at Steward Gu's happy expression of meeting an old friend in a foreign land, Arbor did not say much and silently took a step back. Morong Yin turned around and looked at Steward Gu, his expression slightly startled. You are? The one beside Uncle Fong, Steward Gu? Yes, yes, yes. Young master has a good memory. We've only met once back then, so you still remember me. Manager Gu said with a face full of joy. I really didn't expect to meet young master here. Oh, that's right. My young miss and young master are also on this ship. Young master, let's go over and have a chat. Morong Yan's face revealed a trace of embarrassment. He hadn't come here to reminisce about the past. He still had some matters to discuss with Grand Duke Qin and the second young master Ziqin. Gu Dazhong hurriedly poured out his grievances. Young master, our old master brought young miss along the way for 2 reasons. Firstly, it was to inspect the properties in Great Jubilee City. Secondly, it was also for young miss and young master's marriage. Morong Fei opened her mouth wide. How could there be such a coincidence? The 3 siblings had received a mission from their clan to follow the Qin family to the Pond Lotus Sage realm. They could still meet eldest brother's fiancé along the way like this? What kind of ill-fated relationship was this? Morong Fei tugged on her second brother's sleeve and pulled him to the side. Didn't father say that eldest brother's engagement was annulled the year before last? Chapter 48-46. That's right. Morong Zhao had an incomprehensible expression. When eldest brother was in closed-door cultivation 2 years ago, the Fong family sent people to annul the engagement. They said that the girl couldn't afford to wait and wondered if eldest brother would enter closed-door cultivation for several more decades. It wouldn't be good to keep delaying the marriage. Morong Fei nodded. She was also very clear about this matter. Back then, the Fong family brought people to denounce him, and her father apologized awkwardly. Eldest brother and that Miss Fong were originally not too compatible. With eldest brother's current mystique venerable cultivation, he probably still had several hundred years to live in the future. Miss Fong had never cultivated and was only a normal person. She absolutely couldn't accompany him for his entire life. Therefore, she remembered that when the Fong family proposed annulling the engagement, her father readily agreed. Why was this manager Gu talking about this marriage, as if they were close friends now? Could it be that Miss Fong was unable to get married, and the Fong family's master regretted it afterward? And when he saw eldest brother coming out of closed-door cultivation, he wanted to pick up this marriage and establish a relationship with their Morong clan again. This was too comical and laughable. Morong Fei couldn't resist shaking her head. Suddenly recalling something, she quickly walked to the little stoic's side and said with a smile, "Little miss, I remember where I've seen you before." Morong Fei said with bright eyes, "I've once browsed through all the information about the holy water sect that aunt is in. You're my youngest aunt's personal disciple, right?" With Morong Fei's mention, Morong Zhao's memories also came back. He hastily nodded and said, "Right, no wonder I found you strangely familiar. So you're a disciple of the holy water sect." Arbor glanced at them and pretended to ask casually, "You all know about Master's matter?" Morong Fei withdrew her playful expression and nodded solemnly. Back then, the holy water sect's destruction dealt a huge blow to father and my uncles. Our clan sent people to Sikong planet to investigate the truth, but at that time, the entire holy water peak was enveloped by withered vines and ancient trees. The main peak was razed to the ground, leaving not many traces behind. However, we could still analyze some clues. Morong Fei said seriously, "The clan has always sent people to investigate this matter. After a period of close observation, we followed the clues and found the direction of Shuntian Prefecture. However, when we arrived, the entire 6 prefectures were in turmoil. There was a hidden force sweeping through the 6 prefectures like a hot knife through butter. Right now, the authority is completely under Shuntian Prefecture, in the hands of that Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord." Morong Zhao nodded. "In order to find out the cause of little aunt's death, we could only send people to secretly capture the Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord." What? Arbor had been listening and didn't say anything. Only a faint sense of melancholy lingered in his heart. "Isn't this the right way to treat your family? Regardless of the reason, Morong Sun left the Morong family of forgetfulness and headed to the lower star domain to develop herself. However, the clan still kept Morong Sun's whereabouts in mind. Once they received news of her death, they would definitely send someone to investigate. Not every family was as cold as Wang Chuan Longsher to his mother, right? When Arbor abruptly heard Morong Zhao say that they captured the Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord, he couldn't help but raise his voice. Shit, it can't be right? She had been busy all day recently and hadn't contacted Duanzhong for a long time. Could it be that this old fellow Duanzhong was captured by someone? Chapter 48-47. Seeing her agitated reaction, Morong Zhao and his sister hastily asked, "Is there a problem?" According to our investigation, there is conclusive evidence that Shuntian Prefecture accounted for more than half of the people who attacked the Holy Water sect back then. Arbor glanced at the siblings and asked exasperatedly, "Done, I mean, you guys captured that Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord, Gung Pingqing, and brought him back to the River of Forgetfulness." "That's right," Morong Fei said solemnly. "We sealed his divine sense at the first moment and imprisoned him in the dungeon for interrogation. That old punk was also stubborn and refused to confess at all. The strangest thing was that the soul searching was ineffective against him." "Arbor, you guys really searched for the wrong person." She could even imagine that old punk Dunju's bitter melon face, his small hands clutching the 2 bars as he wailed, "Master, little master, save Dunju. Peach blossoms, save your Dunju." Arbor couldn't resist massaging his throbbing head and vaguely seemed to hear Dunju's miserable cries. What a pitiful old punk. Why was he so unlucky in this lifetime? "When did you guys capture Dunju, that Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord?" "When?" Morong Zhao and Morong Fei pondered for a moment before replying. "Probably around 3 months ago." Arbor widened his eyes in astonishment. "Then you guys have been detaining him and torturing him?" Morong Fei smiled embarrassedly. "That's right. Actually, we didn't want to detain him. It's mainly because this guy doesn't speak the truth. His words don't match and sound like he's making up lies." Arbor was speechless and said after a moment of silence, "Can you guys release him first after returning? You know him?" Morong Fei was startled and sized up Arbor. "That old man doesn't look like a good person." Arbor didn't know how to explain it to them and considered for a moment before saying, "Actually, you guys captured the wrong person. Right now, the wisp of soul in Gung Pingqing's body is temporarily residing in a friend of mine." Morong Zhao and his sister were at a loss for words as they looked at Xiaomu speechlessly. "It's a long story. Let's talk about it later." Arbor signaled them to turn around with his eyes. Morong Zhao and his sister turned around and saw their eldest brother, Morong Yen, walking towards them. Morong Fei smiled and said, "Is it settled?" Morong Yan's expression was somewhat stiff. He shook his head and raised his hand to massage his throbbing temples. In a low voice he said, "This steward Gu is adamant that there is no annulment of the engagement document, saying that this matter is not set in stone. Therefore the engagement still exists." Everyone looked at each other. His big brother was being blamed by someone. Morong Fei's little face puffed up in anger. Back then, they were the ones who wanted to break off the engagement. Now they are also the ones who refused to break off the engagement. I really don't know what they are trying to do. Why is it that the reason of the world is always on the side of the Fang clan? Morong Yen smiled good-naturedly. "Forget it. Let's talk about this later. Little sister, you stay here and don't run around. Your second brother and I are going to discuss with the 2 young masters of the Qin estate about entering the secret realm." They had a purpose for this trip, which was to maximize their clan's benefits. Morong Yen glanced sideways at Arbor and nodded very politely. Before he could speak, he heard Morong Zhao say, "He's one of us." Chapter 48-48. Eldest brother, this is little aunt's direct disciple. Morong Yen belatedly glanced at the little girl, with an expression of sudden realization. "Ah, it's that one from planet Sikong's holy water sect." "No wonder, younger sister," said the little girl. Looked familiar at first glance. It turned out she really was one of them. Little Ant's direct disciple was no different from the Morong family's direct disciple. Morong Yen hastily said with a smile, "Please forgive me for not recognizing Miss earlier." The little stoic's face was still stoic, but her eyes were brimming with vigor. She glanced at Morong Yen and pretended not to care. No need to take it to heart. Before she could finish speaking, she saw Morong Yen take out a small box from his inner world and hand it to Arbor. "Little junior sister, you don't mind me calling you this, right? Take this small item and treat it as senior brother's greeting gift to you. It's just a trifling item. It's a few formations that senior brother made himself and can be used at any time." The belated siblings, Morong Zhao and Morong Fei, also hastily took out gifts and piled them in the little stoic's hands. "Little junior sister, we'll be a family from now on. Don't be afraid. Even if little Ant is no longer here, our Morong family of Forget River will still be your strong backing." Morong Fei paused and asked in confusion, "Speaking of which, where have you been all these years?" After the Holy Water sect was destroyed back then, the Morong family of Forget River actually sent a group of people to stand guard outside planet Sikong's Holy Water sect for several months. In the end, they didn't find a single Holy Water sect disciple, which was truly a huge setback. They only withdrew everyone half a year later. At that time, those clansmen reported that there was no one alive in the Holy Water sect. All the uncles, elders, and uncles in the clan were extremely furious and had been investigating this matter for many years. However, due to Heavenly Law's obstruction at that time, they didn't dare to extend their hands too far. They had been investigating in secret, and their progress was very slow. Arbor's eyes brightened, and she silently took back the gifts the little brothers and sisters handed her. She said, "It's a long story." The three people. Strange, why did they suddenly feel awkward? "It's a long story," the little stoic said with a conflicted expression. "I'll tell you when I have time in the future." Of course, it was impossible for her to tell them about it. It would be better to bring them to the current Holy Water sect and send a talkative senior sister to tell them about it. Morong Fei smiled happily. "That's good too." The little stoic's mouth twitched. She originally wanted to tell them that Morong Sun might still be saved. But on second thought, in order to avoid having too much hope and too much disappointment, it was better not to talk about it for now. Perhaps in the future, he would be able to save his master. At that time, he would let his family meet. Wouldn't it be better to be surprised and happy? "Everyone, are you done catching up?" Eldest young Sir Qin strolled over with a grin and glanced at the little girl's calm face. Bah, this little girl still wanted to lie to him? She was clearly very happy and excited on the inside. If it weren't for them being present, perhaps the little stoic would have already pulled that Miss Morong intimately to the side to chat. "Jojo, is it okay if you share a tent with Miss Morong tonight?" Arbor nodded without any objections, but Morong Fei appeared very happy. "You've stayed on this sea turtle island for 2 days already, right?" Before Arbor could complain, eldest young Sir Qin nodded and said with a smile, "Yes, everything is ready. We're just waiting for your key." Morong Fei's hand reached into her bosom. Chapter 48-49. He took out a very ordinary cloth pouch and poured out a gilded copper key from it before handing it to eldest young Sir Qin. Eldest young Sir accepted it very politely with a smile. At the same time, he took out 4 other gilded copper keys that looked exactly the same in terms of specifications and quality. When the 5 keys were placed together, they emitted a bright glow under the sunlight. Arbor's large eyes glanced at those 5 keys before retracting her gaze. Eldest young Sir Qin walked to her side with a smile. "Jojo, I'll leave these keys to you for safekeeping." Arbor looked at him strangely. Eldest young Sir chuckled and placed all 5 keys in her hands. "All right, you can go rest. Today, 5th brother told me that you didn't take an afternoon nap. You must be exhausted, right?" Arbor rolled her eyes. She really wanted to refute that her sister didn't need to take an afternoon nap every day. Recently, she had been working too hard in order to recover her divine sense as soon as possible. Who took an afternoon nap? The little fellow put away the 5 keys and silently glanced at eldest young sir, before walking towards her tent. Morong Fei hastily followed and excitedly asked, Little junior sister Jojo, with my condition, we still have to stay here for 4 to 5 days? Arbor nodded, and led her towards her tent. The entrance to the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm had to be opened, or else they wouldn't even be able to enter the secret realm's main entrance. Along the way, the island was barren without any resources other than rocks and sand. A row of tents of various sizes were crowded together on the sand and rocks, forming a circle of varying heights. I see that this tent area is quite crowded. The Qin estate of the Divine Province must have emptied most of their assets, and moved all of them to the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm, right? We saved more than 20 people along the way, Arbor explained reluctantly. Morong Fei absent-mindedly glanced behind her, and her gaze suddenly turned sluggish. Sensing the change in her aura, the little stoic also glanced behind her without batting an eyelid. She saw that warm-hearted eldest sister-in-law Yang, helping the sickly Miss Fong out of a small tent, and slowly walking forward along the sandy ground. A few able-bodied laborers were helping the duo clan members to repair a few collapsed tents. Last night, the wind was so strong that several tents were blown over. If these were not repaired today, the existing tents would be even more crowded. At this moment, Miss Fong also saw the nearby arbor from the distance of a few strong men who were fixing tents. A hint of fear and dread flashed in his eyes. Previously, it was this woman who had said decisively that she would chop off one of her brother's legs. In the end, his poor brother really did lose a leg. Her younger brother was still so young. How was she going to support him in the future? These hateful practitioners were all high and mighty, dominating the lives and futures of the weak. They were extremely hateful. Arbor glanced at Miss Fong, and then retracted his gaze. His brows unconsciously furrowed. In that instant, she could feel Miss Fong's intense resentment. This girl actually resented him? Arbor shook his head. What's wrong? Morong Fei keenly sensed that there seemed to be some animosity between Arbor and Miss Fong. Speaking of which, it was strange. How could a quiet person like the little stoic have a conflict with Miss Fong? Arbor led Morong Fei back to his tent. Senior sister. Chapter 4850. The little stoic said with a stoic face. Go rest first and come out to eat in a bit. Fuck, what is that thing? Quick. Get out of the way. Hurry and disperse. It's crashing down, a series of exclamations rang out. Arbor looked up and saw a bird-shaped flying device crookedly crashing into the tent area ahead. That collision looked like it was going to destroy heaven and earth. Everyone screamed as they fled from their tents one after another, and swarmed toward the area where Arbor and Morong Fei were standing. From afar, they saw that bird-shaped flying spirit tool somersaulting a few times in the air before swooping down toward the ground. Boom! After a loud noise, the front cabin of the flying spirit tool plunged into the sandy ground, raising a row of tents nearby to the ground. A duo clansman was strenuously propping up a tent. When he saw this scene, he was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth in time, and ate a mouthful of dirt on the spot. The tent that had just been set up in front of him was torn to pieces with a crash. Everything fell apart. Young Master Omega Kotoku rushed over when he heard the commotion, and hastily ran to the little stoic's side to ask, Are you all right? Arbor was baffled. What could happen to her? She was already quite a distance away from where the flying spirit tool had crashed. What problem could there be? Young Master Omega Kotoku sized her up. Seeing that she was indeed fine, he nodded and instructed, Stay here and don't move. The little stoic. It was really annoying. Everyone always liked to say this to her. After glaring at Omega Kotoku's back, the little stoic tugged at Morong Fei beside her. Let's go over and take a look. Morong Fei's lips curved. How could she not watch a good show? She naturally agreed gladly. The two of them quietly ran over. When they got closer, they saw a large circle of people gathered there. There was a large pit in the middle. Half of a bird-shaped flying spirit tool was buried in the pit. It took a long time for the door of the air transportation spiritual tool to finally open from the inside. A brownish-yellow spirit dog that was barking madly jumped out from inside. When it saw the group of people staring at each other, it didn't care about anything else and barked at them, until a lazy voice called out, "Shut up." Only then did the big fellow stop its incessant barking. It hopped over to the side of the spirit tool cabin and used its claws to crawl down the cabin door. He saw a young man in white, who looked to be about 20 years old, climb out of the spirit tool cabin. She raised her hand and patted the dog's head. Then, she turned her beautiful eyes and met the Omega Kotoka's lukewarm gaze. So it's young Master Yin from Shangyuancheng. It seemed that Omega Kotoku recognized the person in front of him. Arbor thought for a moment. Then he took a few steps forward and stood a little closer to Morong Fei, watching the show. It's really a small world. That young Sir Yin pretended to be surprised, and then lazily walked forward. China states second young sir. You also came to Lotus Pond Island for a vacation? Vacation my ass. Everyone rolled their eyes at him. You came to this lousy island for a vacation, and almost destroyed the entire tent area as soon as you arrived. As if the holy domain collided with the divine continent. Yet you could still show such a harmless expression. You were simply asking for a beating. Is that not the case? Young Sir Yun was surprised. This humble one came here for a wonderful vacation. I heard that the people of Wang River are beautiful, and the mountains, rivers, and scenery are all beautiful. Chapter 4851. He paused, and his gaze landed on Arbor. Suddenly his eyes brightened and he exclaimed, "Wow! There's an exquisite and wonderful person here." Young Master Omega Kotoku scooted a few steps in front of him and blocked his wanton sizing up gaze. Your Yin family also wants a share of the loot? What do you mean? Young Master Yin asked innocently. Share what loot? This young master said that I came here for a vacation. Enough, enough. He knew that he wouldn't get any information from this person, even if he rambled on. Young Master Omega Kotoku gruffly interrupted him. Yin Yunji, so what if you're here? Can't you be more reliable and do things properly? Young Master Yin hastily apologized. Sorry, the Forgetfulness River is too vast. Before setting off, Elder Brother already reminded me that I can't use the air transportation spirit weapon because it's easy to get lost. I have to take a boat. Unfortunately, I didn't listen to Elder Brother, and as a result, sigh, we've been wandering around the Forgetfulness River for almost 10 days, and there's really nothing we can do about it after running out of spirit stones. This young master also didn't want to fall down. Unfortunately, it really can't hold on any longer. As they spoke, a dozen or so people continuously crawled out of the spirit weapon cabin. Each of them had a dumbfounded expression as they looked around. A burly man nearly 2 meters tall like an iron tower quickly walked up and asked with a bow. Young master, you're not injured, right? Young Master Yun glanced askance at him. Do you think this young master looks injured when he's talking cheerfully and wittily? All right, move to the side. He circled around the Omega Kotoku young master blocking his way, and walked towards the little stoic. However, a white figure flashed in front of him, and eldest young Master Qin also floated over from the side, and blocked his path with a grin. Little third Yin, did you come to the mystic realm to look for treasures? Ah, eldest young master, hello. Yin Yunji walked up very politely, and cupped his fists in greeting at eldest young Master Qin. This young master came here to sightsee. Eldest young Master Qin and young Master Omega Kotoku rolled their eyes at the same time. What? Based on what you're saying, there's a secret realm that's about to open? Young Master Yin blinked his doggy eyes and asked curiously. Can I bring my men in with me? After all, I can also gain some knowledge. First young master and second young master complained in their hearts at the same time. If I said I wouldn't bring you along, would you obediently stay here and not follow me? What was she pretending for? She was even better at pretending to be a little black lotus than Emolien. He really wanted to stomp on him a dozen times. Yin Yunji finally circled around the two young masters, who were like wooden stumps, and swiftly flew to the little stoic's side. He said with a grin, Ah, nice to meet you, little miss. I'm Yin Yunji from the Yin family. How about we get to know each other? You're a member of Shangyuan City's Yin family? Morong Fei was vigilant as she raised her hand to shield the little stoic and pulled her back. That's right, that's right. Morong Fei did not say anything as she threw a punch towards his face. Yin Yunji couldn't react in time. His handsome face took a solid hit, and he felt as if the sky was about to collapse. The little stoic stood next to the two people, and her small mouth involuntarily curled up when she saw this scene. She purposely moved to the side and opened up a path for Morong Fei to show off. She punched left and right, sparing no effort. Young Master Yun, who was grinning cheekily, was still pretending to cry out in pain at the beginning, but in the end, it was really fucking painful. Chapter 4852. There was truly no justice in this world. Of the two ladies in front of him, although the little stoic looked icy and expressionless, her appearance was truly fair and adorable and very eye-catching. As for the slightly taller lady next to the stoic man, although she was inferior to the stoic man, she was also very good-looking. Yin Yunji felt that he had never been so unlucky in his life. Not only was he beaten up by a beautiful lady, but he was also being watched expressionlessly by another one. Stop, 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 please stop. Yin Yunji could only hastily shout. Miss, what exactly is going on? Why are you beating me? Io. At the start he could still shout, but in the end, he had no choice but to retaliate in self-defense. In the end, the most ridiculous thing happened. As soon as he retaliated, the little stoic, who was originally watching from the side, suddenly pulled out a wooden club and hastily shouted, Senior sister, you're not fighting alone. She swung that shiny golden club and rushed forward, ganging up on Yin Yunji with Morong Fei. Everyone, eldest young Sir Qin couldn't help but twitch his mouth, feeling that he couldn't bear to watch. After being hit twice by the club, Yin Yunji felt that if he retaliated against the little stoic again, he might be even more unlucky. Thus, he didn't retaliate again, and just kept fleeing outside, almost colliding head-on with fifth young Sir Qin, who was walking over with a plate of pastries. What happened? Fifth young Sir glanced at them in astonishment. Just now, he was preparing food in the distance when he heard the huge commotion, so he hurried over to take a look. The little stoic silently put away that golden club and bounced to fifth young Sir's side, adeptly helping him take the plate in his hand. Don't eat too much, it'll be dinner soon, fifth young Sir instructed. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't help but facepalm. He kept feeling that this fifth brother of his was becoming more and more like a little stoic bodyguard. He had to exhort him for everything. What's wrong? Fifth young Sir looked up at his eldest brother and second brother. When Yin Yunji saw the little stoic walking past him with a plate, his mouth couldn't help but twitch as he shouted, Why did you hit me? The little stoic thought for a moment before swallowing half a pastry and answering, I can't let senior sister fight alone. Morong Fei couldn't resist beaming with joy. This little junior sister that he had just reunited with was truly too interesting. Little Aunt really had good taste. How did she find such an interesting little stoic disciple for her? The corner of Yin Yunji's mouth twitched. Then do you know that this senior sister of yours is very problematic? She hit me all of a sudden. She didn't even have a reason for hitting me. Don't you think this is wrong? The little stoic nodded. It's a bit off. Yin Yunji, why did you step forward to help the tiger do evil? You have no integrity, you little rascal. There's nothing I can do about it. She's my senior sister. Yin Yunji became even more melancholic and speechless. But I'm still your senior brother. Do you know? Our Shangyuan City's Yun clan is the clan of your mentor, the principal of the Royal Academy, Yin Piaomiao. So when you beat up Yin Piaomiao's nephew, your proper senior brother, do you think you did the right thing? The little stoic's eyes instantly brightened. Yin Yunji felt an inexplicable sense of panic. Fuck, what's going on? This stoic face doesn't look like a happy reunion. You're the nephew of Dean Yun. That's right, I'm your senior brother Yin Yunji. Senior sister hit. The little stoic hollered and rushed forward again. Chapter 4853. This idiot in front of him was actually Yin Piaomiao's eldest nephew? This was really great. In the past, due to his respect for his teachers, He couldn't find any reason to beat up the headmaster who tricked him. Now his fat nephew had personally delivered himself to his doorstep to be beaten up. It simply couldn't be any better. This fellow was in a great mood, and directly stuffed the plate into the fifth young master's hands. Without another word, he took out that golden club, and smashed it at Yun Yunji. Morong-Fei secretly exclaimed in her heart, "This is really my biological junior sister." She drew her sword and fought together. She hastily withdrew her hand and followed up. The two of them flew forward one after the other. The club whooshed through the wind, and their fists rained down. Without another word, they gave Yun Yunji another round of fat beatings. A few Yin family members were so anxious that they wanted to go forward and help, but they were stopped by another handsome young master, who had a smile on his face. "It's fine. Old Third likes to be pretentious. It's not a bad idea to let him get beaten up and learn from his mistakes. Besides, he's very resistant to beatings." Everyone. They wondered if the young master would feel guilty when he said this. Their family's third young master was actually chased and beaten by two girls, until he fled in panic with an ashen face. Truly pitiful. Eldest Omega Kotoku was speechless. Seeing Yun Yunji get beaten up from the east to the west, and then chased back to the east, he instantly sympathized with this person. When he looked at this fellow just now, he felt that his words were rather infuriating, and really wanted to beat him up. He didn't expect Jojo to help him without another word. He was really a rather awesome little stoic. At this moment, young Master Omega Kotoku's anger also subsided a lot, and his heart also felt much more at ease. This fellow watched coldly from the sidelines, as that unlucky Yun Yunji dodged his attacks here and there, without the slightest ripple in his eyes. "You deserve it. You should have met someone like Qiao Qiao, who would beat you up until you couldn't speak." Hey, stoic. Senior brother was wrong, alright. Don't hit me. Don't hit me. Senior brother said, "To tell the truth, I said it." Yes, senior brother has long recognized you. More than 80% of the Yun family had probably flipped through this stoic face's information. Not only did this girl study under Morong Sun, but she also entered Yun Fur and Yin Piamia's academy and studied there for a period of time. So she had a close relationship with them. Furthermore, this little girl was an out-and-out genius. In the entire Yun family of Shangyuan City, there was not a single person who could compare with this little girl in terms of talent. In just a few short years, this child had grown to such a level. Although she might have had many fortuitous encounters along the way, the degree of her bone structure and aptitude was definitely not to be doubted. The Mu family of the Divine Prefecture and the Dragon family of Wangshuan were actually making such a fuss over such a dazzling little genius. From the looks of it, the Mu family of the Divine Prefecture seemed to have repented, but the Dragon Clan of Forgetfulness, it seemed that there would be no Dragon Clan of Forgetfulness in the future. Yun Yunji wiped his face and took a step back. He grinned and said, "Little junior sister, why don't we make peace? Don't hit senior brother." In actuality, the little stoic hadn't done anything for a long time. She exercised a bit. On one hand, it would be helpful for her afternoon nap later. And on the other hand, she could treat it as training if they went overboard. She would have to worry about whether or not it would affect her child. "Little junior sister. Who's your little junior sister?" Morong-Fei irritably shouted at him. The 100-year grievances between the Morong clan and the Yin family truly could not be resolved in a short period of time. Back then, because of the Yin family's ancestor, the Morong clan fled the Divine Prefecture and moved to Wangshuan. Chapter 4854. The two families had been in conflict for the past 100 years. Although circumstances had changed with the passage of time, the conflict between the two families still existed. Especially in the previous generation, the matter between youngest aunt and that person caused a commotion between the two families, but it wasn't resolved properly in the end. When Morong-Fei thought of this, she couldn't help but sigh deeply. When facing Yun Yunji, she put on a completely ladylike face. "Speak, what is your purpose for coming here?" To take a perfect fake vacation. Yin Yunji stuttered after being yelled at by her. Arbor glanced at him and raised his small hand, intending to pat his shoulder sympathetically. However, the latter was probably scared by her wooden club, so when he saw her raise her small hand, his instinctive reaction was to shrink back. The noodle vendor glanced at his hand and silently put it back down. She stroked her small belly comfortingly in passing. "Child, Mom isn't this irritable every day." The main thing was that when they met, their eyes were exceptionally red. In the past, she was tricked by Headmaster Yin to the point of vomiting. Now that she could finally trick his fat nephew, she was especially excited now that she had her own child. She would inexplicably think of Long Chuyan when she thought of all sorts of things. Speaking of which, when she was in Long Chuyan's belly back then, she was definitely very obedient and quiet like her own child. Her child would probably be like her. She didn't know what the little fellow thought of, but a faint smile actually appeared on her face. It was truly a rare sight. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't resist taking a few more glances at her before his gaze landed on Yin Yunji. "Little third Yin, look at the good deeds you've done. Have your men clean up these lousy tents for me." Eldest young Sir Qin glanced at him disdainfully. "Take out more tents and supplies. Treat it as your compensation." When the little stoic heard the word compensation, her eyes abruptly lit up. The eldest young sir was about to end the conversation, but when he saw the little stoic's shining eyes, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Recalling the little fellow's past tricks, he hastily added, 20 million spirit coins as compensation. I won't let you off if it's a single cent less." Yin Yunji's handsome face immediately turned a bit green. "Why don't you go rob someone? Did the Qin estate's eldest young sir change his profession to become a bandit? How can robbing be as quick as cheating you?" Eldest young Sir Qin thought to himself. "Are you going to give it to me or not? If you don't want to give it to me, then scram. This Lotus Pond Island belongs to your family?" Yin Yunji was speechless. How could there be such a rude person in this world? The little stoic's eyes brightened again when she heard this. Eldest young Sir Qin suppressed his belly full of laughter and nodded with great difficulty. "That's right, we have an island master here." Yin Yunji was dumbfounded. Why hadn't he heard that this Lotus Pond Island had an owner? "May I ask who the island master is?" The little stoic took 2 steps forward. Yin Yunji didn't react for a moment, and said to her with a smile, "Little junior sister, we're a family. You definitely won't cheat your senior brother. Do you know who the owner of this island is?" The little stoic took another 3 steps towards him. Yin Yunji was stunned for a moment before he exclaimed, "It's you." It was obvious. The small island owner nodded and looked at him with sincerity. Then all right. Yin Yunji thought for less than 3 seconds before he hastily nodded. He fished out a spirit coin card from his sleeve and handed it to the little stoic, saying, "Keep the goodies within the family. You're my little junior sister, so this money is well spent for you." Eldest young Sir Qin twitched his mouth and didn't want to pay attention to this Yin Yunji. Chapter 4855. The Yin family members were even more exasperated. Their young master was like an idiot and believed everything the other person said. No wonder young Master Biao always mocked him for his low IQ. Everyone was finally able to settle down on the island. The Yin family members also took out a lot of supplies and added them to the tent area. Yin Yunji wanted to live closer to the little stoic, but the little stoic had already set up several tents around her. This guy had no choice but to settle for the next best thing and settle down next to eldest Qin's tent. That night, everyone ate a fairly sumptuous dinner. The little stoic swallowed a soul-soothing pill and cultivated as usual before sleeping in her clothes. Morong Fei had already been asleep for a long time wrapped in a blanket and only let out light snoring sounds. After the crash of the air transportation spiritual tool during the day, the camp that had been bustling with noise for most of the day finally sank into silence. The entire camp was quiet. Everyone had quieted down. Only a black shadow was crawling in the darkness, rustling. It crawled all the way to Arbor's tent entrance and lightly arched against the curtain. Pulling back the thick cotton curtain, the dark shadow was just about to enter the tent. A crow-gold arrow flew through the air and was about to pierce the black shadow's body when that thing deftly shifted outwards. It caused the crow-gold arrow to fall to the ground with a dull thud. In the silent night, Arbor's jet-black eyes glowed as she stared at the tent entrance without the slightest hint of sleepiness. Morongfei's vigilance was also very good. As soon as Arbor made a move, she did her best to pull herself out of her deep sleep. She abruptly sat up and threw off the blanket on her body. Her other hand was propped up on the ground, and her drowsy eyes instantly widened into circles as she assumed a posture that indicated she was ready to fight at any moment. What happened? Something came in. Arbor raised her palm and sucked slightly. The crow-gold arrow nailed to the ground turned around and flew into her open palm with a whoosh. When Xiao Mu and Morongfei walked out of the tent one after the other, they saw that the candles in the nearby tents had all lit up at the same time. As time was of the essence, Morongfei did not have time to put on her jacket. She hurriedly put on her outer coat and walked out of the tent. As a gust of cold wind blew over, Morongfei's body shivered slightly as she quickly mobilized her spiritual energy to resist the cold. Sure enough, there was something lying on the ground not far away. When it saw them walking out of the tent, it quickly slid its body and flew towards their feet. Arbor fired 2 arrows at it without giving it a chance to say anything. After 2 whooshing sounds were heard, eldest Qin, Omega Kotoku, Yun Yunji cousin Yun, and the people from the Morong clan all ran out of the tent at the same time. Xiao, eldest young Sir Qin, was just about to call out when his gaze landed on the black shadow on the ground. What is this? His eyes stared thoughtfully at the black shadow, and his handsome face sank slightly. At this time, everyone in the camp was awakened by a beast-like roar. One after another, people lit their lamps, got up, and walked out of their tents in fear. He must have mutated. Drag him to the beach outside, and clean him up. Eldest young Sir's tone was steady and strict as he spoke. No, we can't clean him up, we can't. A sharp female voice came from outside the crowd. Everyone turned to look, and saw Miss Fong stumbling in from outside. This girl also hurriedly put on a coat and came out, her hair disheveled and her face weary. When she heard eldest young Sir's words, her face turned green from fright. Chapter 4856. On the other side, after the eldest young master gave the order, 4 or 5 sturdy attendants quickly walked over. Each of them took out a set of armor made of iron sheet from their inner worlds and put it on, then shook the ropes on their hands. Several ropes were wrapped around the black thing on the ground, firmly holding it in place. They stood in a triangular formation and tightened the ropes in their hands. The thing that was bound by them once again let out an angry roar that sounded like a human roar. The black shadow suddenly moved, revealing 2 small, sharp fangs. It bared its fangs and roared at the people around it. Only then did the people who rushed over see clearly what the black shadow was. It turned out to be Miss Fong's little brother, who was 8 or 9 years old. At this moment, he was standing there on one leg. His originally delicate and cute little face was now covered in alternating black and red lines of blood. His eyes were terrifyingly filled with a bloody light. When he looked at people, his eyelids would lift, and his eyeballs would roll up from the bottom, revealing eerie black pupils. Everyone glanced at him, and felt a chill run down their spines. Who would have thought that such an adorable child would inexplicably mutate? Wasn't he fine yesterday? The bodyguards didn't get close to the little zombie, and instead used ropes to bind it. Then they pulled and tugged a few times, dragging the zombie that was hopping on one leg, and taking a few steps forward. No, you can't deal with him. Miss Fong came to her senses, and couldn't help but shriek angrily. She opened her arms to block that person. A pair of rippling eyes glared angrily at Arbor, containing a bit of resentment. Arbor expressed that he was innocently implicated. Was there something wrong with this girl? Of all the people she could glare at, why did she have to glare at Sir Jojo? Did this Sir Jojo look easy to bully? It was simply baffling. Didn't you say that my brother would be fine? Lady Fong yelled hysterically. Look at him, look at him, look at him. Look at him now. You were the one who swore that his corpse poison hadn't spread into his bloodline. Now you're also the one who's watching my poor brother being dealt with. Give me back my brother. Give me back. Miss Fong was anxious and angry. She was so angry that she almost couldn't catch her breath. Her body went limp, and she was about to fall backward. Eldest sister-in-law Yang and a few other women hurriedly supported her. Eldest sister-in-law Yang placed her hand on Miss Fong's chest and hurriedly soothed her. She hurriedly said, Miss Fong, if there's anything, let's talk nicely. Don't be so agitated. Miss Fong, let's talk nicely. How can we talk nicely? Miss Fong angrily pushed Mrs. Yang and the others' hands away and shouted at Arbor. It's her, it's her. What a liar. He even lied to me that my brother would be fine. He said that he would be fine after we cut off his leg. What was the result? Not only did you cause my younger brother extreme pain, but you're also mutating now. Why are you treating us like this? Why are you doing this? Arbor looked at Miss Fong with a strange expression. Jojo, Sama was called a liar? She blinked and lowered her head to look at young Master Fong. Then, she looked up at Miss Fong and said with a stoic expression, I didn't lie to you. Miss Fong's brother could indeed be saved that day. But now the truth was right before their eyes. Young Master Fong had mutated. What did this mean? It could only mean one thing. Arbor raised his head and looked deeply at Miss Fong. Chapter 4857. That day, a drop of mucus was sprayed on young Master Fong's leg, but it hadn't spread yet. She wasn't wrong at the time. Cutting off his leg decisively could effectively prevent the corpse poison from spreading to other areas. Logically speaking, this young Master Fong shouldn't have shown such a strange change. Unless he had taken some unknown medicine in the past 2 days? Arbor gazed calmly at Miss Fong. His scorching gaze was like a flame burning fiercely in the depths of Miss Fong's heart. Anger burned this Miss Fong to the brink of delirium. She suddenly let out an ear-piercing shriek. Don't quibble anymore. Don't deny it. You actually made an error in judgment. Miss Fong shouted harshly. Because of you, my younger brother lost a leg and still couldn't save his life. Since that's the case, then why did you cut off his leg back then? What's the use of cutting it off? Isn't it just to make him suffer another round of pain and suffering at such a young age? You vicious woman, what are you after? Why do you want to harm us too? Miss Fong was halfway through her yelling when a guard suddenly walked up and locked her arms. Miss Fong struggled and roared angrily. What are you doing? This woman dares to do such a vicious thing. Don't tell me she won't tell others? Vicious woman, you vicious woman. Young Master Omega Kotoko flicked his sleeve and slapped Miss Fong heavily. Miss Fong only felt a fishy sweetness fill her mouth when the tremendous force hit her, and her face also tilted to one side due to the impact. Second young master's expression was very unsightly, and his eyes were filled with impatience as he said, What are you waiting for? Drag them both out to see if they don't want to stay here. Eldest young Master Chin said indifferently, Deal with the little zombie as soon as possible. Everyone else, return to your tents. There's nothing else to do, rest well. The Chin Estate's guards immediately pulled on the ropes and dragged the little zombie that had flared up. They also tied Miss Fong, who was baring her fangs and brandishing her claws, behind her back and were about to send them off. Wait! Arbor called out to the Chin Estate's guards indifferently. A pair of beautiful almond-shaped eyes looked deeply at Miss Fong. Let me ask you, did you give your brother any medicine in the past 2 days? At this time, Miss Fong's eyes were bloodshot, and she looked like she had gone mad. Hearing this, she said without thinking, Among our companions, there is a person who knows a little about medicine. She had given her younger brother some nutritious soup, and used some medicine to stop bleeding and remove scars. Don't tell me you want to accuse someone else? I don't want to wrongly accuse anyone, Arbor said calmly. But I won't be framed for no reason. If she didn't clear things up today, would she have to carry the blame forever? Although Miss Fong's way of thinking was quite strange. She had only kindly advised little brother Fong to cut off his legs to save his life. But now that little brother Fong had turned into a corpse, it became her fault. Go and get the dregs for me to take a look. I'll get it. For the past 2 days, eldest sister-in-law Yang had warmly helped brew the medicine and took care of the Fong siblings. Before long, this eldest sister-in-law brought over the dregs and presented them to Arbor. Arbor carefully inspected it and looked up at Miss Fong. There's nothing wrong with this medicine. Eldest sister-in-law Yang and a worker simultaneously heaved sighs of relief. If there was a problem with this medicine, wouldn't both of them be out of luck? Chapter 48-58. After all, one of them prescribed the medicine, and the other was responsible for taking care of young Sir Fong. If there was a problem with the medicine, then they could hardly absolve themselves from the blame. Miss Fong glared at Arbor with a mocking expression. What exactly are you trying to prove by doing so many senseless things? Arbor swept a cold glance at Miss Fong, causing the latter to swallow back the words she wanted to shout. This little stoic's eyes were bright and sharp, causing people to feel a bit fearful, Miss Fong thought. You yourself are well aware of what you fed your younger brother. Miss Fong's heart thumped heavily, and then she glared at Arbor with widened eyes. What nonsense are you babbling about? You didn't wrongly accuse anyone else just now. So now you're making a false countercharge, and want to wrongly accuse me? Your younger brother was normal before today, right? Sister-in-law Yang subconsciously nodded. That's right. When I delivered the medicine to young Sir Fong this afternoon, there weren't any changes. Looking at the extent of his mutation, he should have taken the basic mutation medicinal fluid this afternoon. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Miss Fong with odd gazes. After noticing everyone's complicated gazes, Miss Fong appeared flustered. She hastily waved her hands and shouted, No, it's not what you think. I didn't. Arbor glanced at her indifferently and flicked a dictum talisman into Miss Fong's glabella, like a streak of light. Still not telling the truth? Her voice was chilly, and her gaze was emotionless and apathetic. Miss Fong glanced at her and couldn't help but tremble all over. Her mouth kept opening and closing, but she couldn't control it at all. I also didn't want to. Do you think I wanted to? My younger brother lost his legs, so he wouldn't stop crying in the middle of the night. That person told me that as long as I took his special medicine, 3 days, my younger brother would recover. How would I know what kind of mutation medicinal fluid it was? Why would I harm my own younger brother? Miss Fong screamed in a heart-wrenching rage. That person told me that as long as I took the medicine, my broken bones could regenerate. Perhaps my younger brother would be able to recover in the future. Everyone looked at Miss Fong with disbelief and speechlessness. This Miss Fong was truly innocent to the extreme. How could she believe such nonsense? Did he really take that precious medicine and give it to his younger brother to drink? She had wrongly trusted others and caused her younger brother to become like this. Yet she had previously blamed the little stoic girl, saying that she had made a mistake in her judgment. This was really a case of a thief crying out to catch a thief and making a false accusation. Miss, Gu Dazhong hurriedly ran over, wanting to stop her from continuing. The way everyone looked at him, as if he was an idiot, was too obvious. Now that Miss had made such a ruckus, all her reputation had been ruined by her. The worst part was that the members of the Morong family were also present. The young lady's crazed look was all seen by Master Morong. Originally, others were indifferent to her. Now that this matter had blown up, it was all over. She can't cultivate and she's stupid. How could the Morong family accept such a daughter-in-law? Arbor looked at Miss Fong coldly. Originally, he didn't want to pay any attention to this young lady. But this person opened her mouth and pinned a crime on her head. In that case, he had to clear things up with her. Right and wrong, everyone had to lay out everything clearly. Of course, Miss Fong might not have foreseen this outcome beforehand, so she couldn't bear it. Chapter 48-59. Miss Fong abruptly snapped back to her senses and forcefully broke free from a Qin estate guard. She raised her hand to her throat and glared at Arbor in shock. What did she just say? Why did she feel like she had said a lot just now? After receiving everyone's unconcealed disdainful gazes, Miss Fong's mind sobered up, and she hastily reached out to grab the dumbstruck eldest sister-in-law Yang. Eldest sister-in-law Yang hastily flung her hand away and staggered back 2 steps. She said with an incredulous expression, Miss Fong, you are too stupid. Eldest sister-in-law Yang really didn't want to attack this unlucky girl with a deathly pale complexion, but the word stupid still jumped out from between her teeth. It had to be said that this Miss Fong was too ridiculously stupid. Even an inexperienced woman like her wouldn't so easily believe a complete stranger, right? She took the medicine and fed it to her younger brother, just because someone said it would be useful? Didn't she consider that this medicinal liquid might harm her younger brother's life? I didn't. Miss Fong's tears fell like rain as she shook her head repeatedly and looked pleadingly at Manager Gu. Gu Dazhong was about to cry from this ignorant eldest Miss Stupidity. His lips twitched for a long time before he finally sputtered. Miss, why? Why didn't you discuss it with me before doing something? Miss Fong wailed loudly. It has nothing to do with me. That person lied to me. He lied to me. All right, don't listen to her nonsense. She was the one who harmed her younger brother's life. Eldest young Sir Qin interrupted apathetically. She couldn't bear the responsibility for the victim's life, yet she turned around and accused someone else of harming him. We don't welcome such a vile and crude person here. Right, we don't welcome her. We don't welcome her. Everyone kicked up a fuss and kept shouting, get out of our camp. Throw her into the sea. Let her have a taste of what it's like to fend for herself. No, don't. Don't, Uncle Gu. Miss Fong reached out to grab Manager Gu's sleeve and desperately grabbed his hand. Manager Gu hastily pacified the surrounding crowd and smoothed things over with a smile. Everyone, don't be so agitated. Who gave you the basic mutated medicinal liquid? Xiao Mu's cold voice cut through the commotion, instantly dispersing the clamorous atmosphere by quite a bit. Everyone thought that it was more important to figure out who gave her the medicinal liquid. Although Fong Gongzi was the only victim in this incident, the mysterious person hiding in the dark was the key to the whole incident. Why did he appear in the camp? Why did he have such a basic medicinal liquid? So, among these people there were spies from the Heavenly Fate Palace. Young miss, quickly explain yourself. Steward Gu was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. If the young miss was thrown out of the camp at this moment, how would she, the young miss of a rich family, live? Steward Gu's heart was anxious. When he turned around and saw Morong Yen and Morong Zhao, he rushed over and pulled on the two of them, saying, Young Master Morong, quickly save my family's young Mississippi. She was insensible and made a mistake, but please, for my family's master's sake, please help her. I don't know, I really don't know anything. Miss Fong cried. That person appeared in front of me with his face covered. I was worried about my younger brother, so I believed him. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.